changed the path of an asteroid when it crashed into it last month 7 million miles from Earth. The double asteroid, called Didymos and Dimorphos, was targeted by NASA to test whether humans have the capacity to alter the trajectory of a potential threat. And after amassing the evidence over the past week, NASA has concluded that it successfully moved the two asteroids closer together. So does this mean that we're all a bit safer from the prospect of an extinction-style event like the one that killed the dinosaurs? Dr. David Whitehouse is an astronomer and astrophysicist.
This is a demonstration of principle. The object that crashed into the Gulf of Mexico and killed the dinosaurs 67 million years ago was a darn sight bigger than Didymos and Dimorphos. And therefore you'd need to either find out that it's threatening us a long time, decades beforehand, or hit it with something substantially bigger than this. But that doesn't seem to be sort of that outrageous now, given the fact that we've done it on a small scale.
And indeed, this pioneering use of so-called deflection technology is the first ever incident of humans deliberately changing the path of a celestial object. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denzelo reporting.
A harrowing situation on Broad Street came to its conclusion Thursday night as a group of hostages were freed from local comedy club The Laugh Up Lounge after a tense 7-minute stand-up set.
Every once in a while, he'd grab his notebook, and I'd think maybe this is it. Maybe he's gonna let us go. But he just kept talking.
Additionally, The Onion recovered this video footage from the cell phone of one of the many captives.
Hey, sir, what do you do
Please,
for work?
if someone sees this, help us. Please help us.
Yeah, micromanagement.
You guys are totally gonna wang it out.
Oh my God, no.
Cool.
I'm not a religious person, but at one point I said the Lord's Prayer, and it actually had a calming effect. Like Jesus was standing next to me and said, "You're gonna get through this."
I mean, sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, don't take life for granted, because you just never know when something like this could happen. So,
this is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program. You can join the show here and bring up anything you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio, it's Eve, Matt,
and Bonnie.
Alex Jones was back in court recently in Connecticut this time after losing his civil case in Texas and being ordered to pay $45 or so million to the victims, so-called victims, the people who had their feelings hurt.
Victims of words.
Yeah, people who had their feelings hurt because a man that they didn't know, broadcasting a radio show that maybe they'd never heard of, was talking about them and saying things that probably weren't true, but maybe he believed those things to be true. But the Texas verdict wasn't enough for these families, the $45 million, which apparently there's some rule in Texas that limits the number to a much lower number than what
he could actually pay out.
Yeah, so the limit I think is like $750,000 per so-called victim, so it ended up being like $1 or $2 million or something like that, I think, when all was said and done.
Well, there's only a couple victims then?
Only in the Texas case. Oh. In the case that just finished up this week, I think it was yesterday that the news came out, as far as Alex Jones and what he is now facing. He's facing $965 million in a civil case verdict based out of Connecticut. And apparently the reason they sued him in Connecticut instead of Texas was because Connecticut doesn't have the same restrictions on payouts that Texas does.
Just the type of thing that grieving parents who are really affected think about.
Money.
Yep, money.
Well, these ones are thinking about it, and now, nearly $1 billion that Alex Jones supposedly has to pay, which of course he doesn't have that kind of money. I mean, he's a successful businessman, no doubt about it, but I mean, the only kind of people that have that sort of money is, Elon Musk level folks.
Thought of Alex Jones as a billionaire.
No, not at all. His company, the Free Speech, what do they call it? Free Speech Systems, I believe, Incorporated, has gone bankrupt. So that apparently has no money left. And of course, Alex Jones has money personally. It's some amount of it, but it's not going to be $100 million, if anything, probably. The story here from thedailybeast.com. Jury decided Wednesday afternoon that InfoWars founder Alex Jones must pay $965 million for spewing lies that the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was a hoax and that the grieving parents involved were paid actors. The money will go straight to the pockets of family members who lost children in the massacre and to an FBI agent who was harassed by Jones's listeners. There were 15 plaintiffs in total.
Doesn't sound like Jones is alleged to have harassed this person.
No, they didn't say, I don't think at any point, that Jones told his listeners to harass these people.
And even if he did, that's not the same as Jones harassing someone.
But in a lot, well, I get what you're saying there, Bonnie, but if he had called for people to harass a person, there at the very least would be the allegation that he could have caused a riot or been the source of criminal threatening or something like that. It wouldn't have looked good. But in this particular case, I've never heard any allegations that Jones himself did anything besides express what he believed on his radio show. And what he believed may indeed have been absolutely crazy.
I don't think it's that crazy.
Or absolutely true, for all we know.
Well,
yeah, I've never seen any type of proof that what he was saying wasn't true. They're just like, oh, that's not true, and therefore you lied. Like, are we going to go through the proof that it's not true before he has to pay $1 billion?
And how did the families who are so affected show proof of loss?
I don't know if they did. I think they just said their feelings got hurt and people were threatening them. So it ruined their lives, more so than losing their child in a shooting ruined their lives. Jones added insult to injury, if you believe the critics, if you believe the people that take the family's side on this. And
I wonder if any of the faces we would recognize from the original occurrence at Sandy Hook actually showed up in the courtrooms.
I wonder if they showed up in any other red flag event. Or wait, what's it called?
False flag.
False flag event.
When you say the faces, you mean the alleged family members?
Did they come to court? I want to know if these people actually, who's showing up? Someone showing up for them?
In a live stream that aired as the jury's verdict was read out, Jones showed no remorse, instead mocking jurors and the Sandy Hook parents who wept as the damages were read out. $57 million, $20 million, $50 million, $80 million, $100 million, blah, blah, Jones said, according to NBC News reporter. Quote, you get $1 million, you get $100 million, you get $50 million. Do these people actually think they're getting any of this money? Jones refused.
Well, I hope that he's more serious about this time, because last time he was like, okay, I'm sorry, I won't ever do it again. And it's just like, you shouldn't have to pay a penny to people for free speech in the United States.
I agree. And it's not like these people, and I don't know exactly what Jones said. I don't have those clips. I wasn't a listener to his show. But honestly, I don't care what he said. I don't care if he named names of these people and said these people are fakers or whatever he believed about that. And again, I think the conspiracy theory is pretty silly, personally. I mean, it's not unbelievable that somebody went and shot up a government school. Now, whether the government put them up to it or not is an interesting question. Whether that person was on psychotropic medications for whatever supposed problems they have, as we've seen with a lot of school shooters, that wouldn't surprise me to find out.
Just another case of Ian propping up the government's...
The government narrative?
Yeah, the government narrative.
Good going, Ian.
Well, look, it doesn't seem unbelievable to me. I personally wouldn't go out on the limb that Alex Jones did about this, but he should be free to go out on a limb like that.
Sure, why not?
And he should be free to have any kind of wild, harebrained theories. I mean, there were theories that alien spaceships had decloaked and shot down the World Trade Centers back in the day. I mean, I've heard all kinds of wild stuff. What was it called? Project Bluebeam or something like that?
No, I think Project Bluebeam is supposed to be a thing where they can cast holographic images.
That's right. Holographic alien spaceships or something. There's holographic planes, I guess, would have been the allegation there.
Like the sky is holographic.
I don't know what it
covers
was.
up
But it was
UFOs.
ridiculous. I mean, it just seemed ridiculous on its face, but some people believe that stuff. And are we going to now tell people they cannot, if they believe a wild conspiracy theory, that they're not allowed to express that? Because that seems to be what this ruling says, is if you have a platform and you believe something that is counter to the official story, and you express that belief, and somebody gets their feelings hurt about it,
says that they did. They might not have feelings. They might all be actors.
Right, that they then get to take you to the cleaners financially. So that appears to be the news here today. If you want to weigh in on it, you're welcome to join us at 603-283-6160. Jones refused to hand over financial data from his businesses before or during the trial and simultaneously filed for bankruptcy protection from creditors earlier this year for InfoWars and its parent company Free Speech Systems. Around the same time, he reportedly transferred some property ownership to his wife. In Texas trial, he said any damages above $2 million would tank InfoWars, but a forensic economist put his company's worth at between $135 and $270 million. Despite appearing to be on the brink of bankruptcy, Jones indicated Wednesday he doesn't plan to stop spreading insane conspiracies about mass shootings. And of course,
that's what he said?
Well, no, that's what the Daily Beast says. You can tell they have a viewpoint here, and it is not pro Alex Jones. I mean, Alex Jones has been raked up the coals by these.
There should not be a single journalist or journalistic outfit in the United States right now that isn't siding with him.
Unfortunately, they're piling on.
It could be them next.
Well, it wouldn't be them next because they don't go out on limbs and say what they actually believe. They just report what they're told to report.
Right, that's true.
Jones's trial played out in Waterbury, Connecticut, 20 miles southwest of where 26 people were killed just over a decade ago. Jury deliberations started October 6th. Only compensatory damages owed by Jones were determined on Wednesday, and jurors will decide at a later date whether Jones must also pay punitive damages. So it's not even over yet. The $965 million
is for making them whole?
Is for compensation. There may be punitive damages still to come. Jones said in a statement, quote, "They want to scare us away from questioning Uvalde or Parkland. We're not going away. We're not going to stop." The number here, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. If you care about freedom of speech, it shouldn't matter what your opinion is about Alex Jones. You can hate him if you want to. You can think that his opinions are ridiculous and despicable, but he should be free to have them, and he should be free to express them and not be financially ruined over it. More coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
The amount of young people being brought up on criminal charges, sex offender charges, for taking nude photos of themselves and putting them online. It's just so sad to see these people having their lives just rolled right over the top of by these prosecutors that want to make it look like they're doing something good, but they're not doing anything that's helping anyone. There's no victim in this case. When you hear the term child pornography, what should come to mind, if anything, should be the idea of forcing children into sexual scenes and videotaping or photographing them.
Forcing children, or somebody
even if it's a child forcing another child, I think the force is the issue there. If you're talking about a 15-year-old girl voluntarily choosing to take a nude photo of herself to send to her boyfriend or to post online, no one forced her to do that.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. Of course, you can bring up anything you want to discuss. That's what we do here. The phones are open, and you can get on broadcast radio with your opinions. As long as they are not in violation of the FCC, we can pretty much talk about anything. And if you've worked or lived at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988, and you've suffered from cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, you might be entitled to compensation. Contaminants were in the drinking water at those times, and there might be some deadlines in order to file for this stuff, so you don't want to wait to call the following number to see if you or a loved one are eligible. That's 888-918-1037, 888-918-1037 if you are at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988, and you've had a serious health issue. Money's already set aside. 888-918-1037. Let's go to the phones here. We're talking about the Alex Jones, just dramatically shocking numbers that he's been ordered to pay the families of the victims there in Connecticut after the shooting from like almost a decade ago. They're saying that because Alex Jones said things that apparently weren't true on his internet show or radio show, that he should basically lose his entire career, lose his entire life, basically to the tune of $1 billion, $960-something million in this case, and another $45 million in the Texas case. It's not even over yet, with a new another round of sentencing coming for the punitive damages. So that has yet to be determined. It's a crazy precedent against freedom of speech, because you should have the freedom to say crazy things in a country with supposed free speech. This is a major attack against that. I presume he's going to appeal this, and who knows how that will go. But right now,
hopefully, to God, if he appeals it, he'll win, because it's just like, can any judge actually be like respected at all if they say that Alex Jones can't say hurtful things if people's feelings get hurt?
Well, judges aren't in the business. They're attorneys, so they're not really in the business of being respected. They don't care about respect. They care
about power.
They care about power. Attorneys in general, as far as every attorney I've ever known on some level, is hungry for a win.
Well, I say we don't have to listen to them at all if they say that we don't have the freedom to say whatever we want in America.
I agree.
Let's go to Jake. He's on the line in Pennsylvania. Jake, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, what's up, Ian? How you doing, buddy?
What's on your mind?
I just wanted to chime in and just confirm what's going on with the control of the narrative, because that's what's going on with Alex Jones. They're impinging on his free speech because he got shut down from YouTube. He got shut down from the big carriers. He's not carried in the press, and he has broken a lot of pertinent stories. So this is like the last attack they could get to do to shut him up. And this is the world we're living in right now. And this is what we're seeing at the national stage. And those of us that put the effort in to know what Alex Jones is trying to do and what he's gone through just to be able to keep publishing this info and get it in front of us and us to get to that info. But that's literally just the business model of how to control the narrative, and it affects us on down into our own communities. And I'm not trying to turn it towards me, but that's literally what I'm experiencing because I'm a civil activist in a very corrupt district. And the state control of the narrative, the media just going along with whatever that narrative is and not publishing outside of it for fear of reprisal. The local suppression, I mean, even here in the local town, I'm banned off the local Facebooks. I've gone to get help from my fellow veterans, and I've been ejected from the Veterans Day event.
Wow.
For that. Yeah, it's that bad. I'm following it in a docuseries just to obviously civil activists are made, so I became this way for my own motivation. But to follow this story, but just having lived it, I've been doing it for 4 years now, and I have more of a presence internationally in Australia than I do here in Gettysburg.
Wow.
It's
so they shut you out, even though you have a story to tell, even though you've been, abused by the system. The mainstream media doesn't want to hear about it because they don't want to be seen as questioning the narrative. They don't want to be seen as outside of the box. They don't want to get cut off from police department press releases and being able to interview the mayor and things like that.
That's at the individual level. I mean, what about the organizational level? Who owns all of our local news places now? Not people who deliver news. It's the businesses that own those that feed what you're supposed to tell to elect their people for whatever they got going on in that region. Well, whatever part, bipartisan ploy cult you want to, adhere to, that's literally the business model of the local news. That's the paper. All of our generation, we're here talking right now. We're following your website apart from YouTube for a reason. We're doing this because we've had our head pop. We're aware, but that's not allowed to get in front of the normal people.
Nope.
No.
Well, where can somebody go to find your work?
Good point. It's on YouTube. But I'm just completely shadow banned, and I'll even have huge auditors. I'm a medium-sized channel. I have 34,000 followers, but the big guys in the community. I jumped on to the auditing community because I was investigating with my camera. So
when you say the auditing community, you mean First Amendment audits, people that go into various different government bureaucracies and record video.
Correct, because I was having so many interactions with police. I mean, I have half a dozen pullover stops, retaliatory stops. I went in and reported this scandal that I'm following to the police, and they followed I had my 74-year-old father drive so that in case they followed us out to retaliate, I could film legally, just be going off and crazy and what are they going to do to me in the passenger seat?
Right.
And sure enough, they followed us out of this. It's all on video. They followed. This is a great example. Thank you for asking.
So do you have an Odyssey channel?
No, No, man, and you know what? I know about the alternative platforms. I'm too small and I'm shadow banned. But
well, hold on. Wait a minute.
I don't think that makes any sense.
There's no such thing as being too small to be on Odyssey. I mean, as I understand it, they lowered the level there used to be a certain minimum number of subscribers you had to have on YouTube in order to get Odyssey to pick up your channel as an auto subscriber, and that number has been lowered. It used to be 300. I think it's now 100 or something.
So 34,000 is well above.
Yeah, you could easily get your entire channel imported into the Odyssey platform.
Honest to God, I mean, no, I can't. I mean, that's a cute idea, and I understand.
Why not?
Right, but I've started so many different social media platforms, and I've had them banned. I just got on Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
I just got on Rumble, and there's nothing promoted on this. You don't break out on this.
Rumble's not the same as Odyssey. We actually know, I don't know if he's the owner of Odyssey or whatever, but people that work for Odyssey.
Yeah, Odyssey's run by libertarians. I mean, there's no guarantee that if you get on any platform that you're going to get a ton of viewers. We barely have 1,000 subscribers on Odyssey, but the idea is they're not going to take your content offline. You're not going to get shadow banned. I recommend you check it out. There's more coming up here. Thanks, Jake, for the call tonight. It's Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denzelo. A US jury's recommended life in prison rather than the death penalty for the young man responsible for the country's deadliest high school shooting. Nicholas Cruz was 19 when he returned to the school in Parkland, Florida, that expelled him and opened fire. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
After less than a day of deliberation, a unanimous verdict from the jury: life behind bars without parole. The jury said although the murders were cold and calculated, Nicholas Cruz is a broken and mentally ill man and should not get the death penalty. Cruz was calm and showed no emotion as the verdict for each one of the 17 counts of first-degree murder was read to a courtroom packed with family members of the victims, many of whom shook their heads and whispered to each other as they tried to make sense of the jury's decision. But the judge did not issue her sentence. The state prosecutor, who's arguing for the death penalty, says more victims have yet to give their points of view. The court will reconvene on November 1st.
The committee investigating the January 6th attack on the US Capitol has voted to subpoena former President Donald Trump. The committee says it has enough evidence to push for criminal charges against multiple individuals relating to the attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
Democrat lawmaker Benny Thompson said Donald Trump must be accountable, adding the former president is required to answer for his actions. In what's expected to be the final January the 6th hearing, the committee laid out how Donald Trump inspired the violence that unfolded on Capitol Hill, and how he repeatedly tried to join the crowds at the Capitol, even after they began attacking police officers. The committee's subpoena is a formal summons for Trump to appear in person to testify under oath. However, he's now likely to fight that, even as the committee says it has sufficient information to consider criminal referrals for multiple individuals. And if that means Trump, the Department of Justice would need to make the decision to go ahead with a criminal prosecution.
NATO defence ministers have concluded a two-day meeting by reiterating their commitment to supporting Ukraine. Allies announced deliveries of air defence systems and specialist equipment to help Ukraine's forces get through the winter, ahead of a move welcomed by NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg.
NATO allies are supplying advanced systems, including artillery, air defense, and armored vehicles.
And 24,000 Venezuelan migrants will gain entry to the US under a new deal the Biden administration struck with Mexico. The plan's intended to relieve some of the pressures at the border. Almost 4 times as many Venezuelans have attempted to cross into the US via Mexico this year, many having made the dangerous trek at the hands of ruthless smuggling organizations. From bureaus worldwide, this is
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open, and you can join the show here if you want. You can bring up anything. The number is 603-283-6160. And I want to say thank you to A. Friedman, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. A. Friedman is gold level, which means that A. Friedman is contributing at least $10 a month to the AMPS program. You can join him or her over at amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com, and you can get signed up there through our Patreon, and that allows you to get access to some special perks, including the AMP-only podcast that has the full radio show without any recorded ads every single night, uploaded pretty much immediately after the show is over. You can follow us there, and you can support the show directly. And all we ask is $5 a month. A. Friedman is doing twice that, so thank you, A. Friedman. But you can go sign up at amps.freetalklive.com. Here tonight, it's Ian,
Matt,
and Bonnie.
We're going to continue here with a little bit more about the insane verdict by a Connecticut court that has ruled that Alex Jones has to pay $965 million, just under $1 billion, for saying things that hurt somebody's feelings. A group of families that sued Jones over the school shootings in Connecticut, Sandy Hook, at the elementary school back in, apparently that was all the way back in 2012. It's hard to believe that it's been a decade since that happened, but now they're trying to ruin him financially, and this is after a similar verdict, but a much lower verdict in Texas, meaning they found him so-called responsible and ultimately hit him with $45 million there. So
also egregious.
Yeah, over $1 billion is what they're saying he has to pay.
Honestly, it's pretty sus to me. Like the whole thing, the way it came together is pretty sus. Like all these, there are no victims. There are literally no victims to make whole. Show me how any of the people
you mean the ones who got their feelings hurt?
Yeah, the ones who got their feelings hurt. Yeah. Show me how any of them, and this isn't even with punitive damages included.
No, that's coming next.
Yeah, so if there's no punitive damages, so show me how these people lost $1 billion in revenue. How were they damaged to the point of $1 billion pre-punitive damages?
The family members, according to thedailybeast.com, who sued Jones, said they were tormented by strangers who were inspired by his InfoWars webcasts. They argued their harassers were convinced, solely by Jones, that one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history was a massive con.
Really? Because the conspiracy theory YouTube video that I watched about it that completely convinced me that it was a false flag in high school, and all of everyone in my class was talking about it, was not Alex Jones. So I don't think solely Alex Jones is the only reason anyone realizes the fakeness that is the fake Sandy Hook's fake shooting, fake kids, fake parents.
But Alex Jones has a lot more money than whoever that YouTube person was. So
right, so he's better to go after.
Jones.
But they used the word solely.
Yeah, that's what they said.
That's true.
What they
had
to say. They said it was a massive con ordered by Democrats to build support for gun restrictions. This harassment added insult to injury for grieving family members, they argued, many of whom had just lost their child to senseless gunfire as they sat in their first grade classroom.
You know, they also sued the makers of whatever gun he used and won.
They won against the gun manufacturers as well?
They've been trying to sue gun manufacturers for this type of stuff for years.
But they actually successfully did? I had not heard that.
I think so. I don't want to report wrong.
Matt, have you heard anything about that?
It's hard to remember which one belonged to which, but yeah, a bunch of these types of cases have come against gun manufacturers before.
The harassment added insult to injury. Among those who testified against Jones was Mark Barden, whose son Daniel was murdered in the shooting. He said that wackos began flooding his personal website with hateful comments after Jones called the shooting a hoax, calling him a liar and a fraud.
Yeah, but it was this year. It says the Sandy Hook family is settled with Remington, making first-time gun maker held liable for mass shooting.
That's not the same thing. A settlement is a way to get out of being held liable.
I'm surprised that Remington wouldn't carry that the distance.
It says they agreed to pay the family $73 million.
Correct. That's what a settlement is. So what happens with a settlement generally is when somebody's being sued, in this case a big corporation like Remington, they look at the case and they say, well, we'd rather not face whatever the potential consequences are of this case. We're not admitting that we were liable for these actions. We're not admitting any sort of responsibility, but we are going to give you $73 million to make this go away. That's basically generally what a settlement typically means. Most of the time, there's usually some sort of an agreement that goes along with it that says such and such company does not admit any wrongdoing, but we'll pay you $73 million. And the idea is that it was cheaper for them to pay the $73 million than it would be to fight a protracted lawsuit where they may have to pay more than that, just simply in attorney's fees or something like that, where if they end up being found responsible, it could set a dangerous precedent for the gun industry or the future of their company. So they weigh the odds and they weigh the situation and they say, well, we'll just pay them. And it sucks because I agree with you, Matt. They should make a stand for what they believe in, and being able to or just settling a case like that means that somebody else can bring a similar case and expect a settlement as well. So it just kind of opens them up to being continually abused, even though they didn't lose the case. But Jones lost because in his cases he didn't apparently fight it. Apparently he was found guilty, or not guilty is not the word they use, but responsible or whatever. He had defaulted in these civil cases.
I mean, I didn't see this from news. I saw this on Twitter, but somebody said he wasn't allowed to fight it.
Okay, I had not
They said
heard that.
in a case where he wasn't allowed to fight back in Connecticut.
Well, he wasn't allowed to fight back in this case because he'd already lost the case. So this was a case to determine the not the punitive damages, but the other term that I'm not remembering right now. The other kind of compensation.
No, I don't know.
It wasn't
his liabilities.
Something like that. Yeah, whatever the liability was. In this case, the term compensatory damages. So
compensatory.
So this wasn't a case to decide whether or not he was responsible. That had already been decided.
In Texas?
I don't know if it was the Texas one or if it was Connecticut had a separate thing. But as I understand it, Jones didn't show up to court, essentially. He did not make an argument. And so, therefore, they ruled against him.
I thought they weren't allowed. He wasn't allowed to, but
no, that just means he can't make that argument in this case because it wasn't a case. It was just a determination, ultimately, as I understand it. So Barden, the guy that said that somebody harassed him on the internet, said further. So again, he got website comments that called him names like liar and a fraud, which we get that stuff all the time.
I was about to say, when am I going to get $1 billion then?
We get that in our chat room every single night on the YouTube channel by the same people over and over again. But as far as I'm concerned, they have a freedom to say those things.
And one could say that the FBI protects people that do that because James Whittaker never gotten any kind of trouble for harassing Mark.
Well, he actually threatened Mark and his family. He straight up threatened them with violence, and he never had anything to do. The FBI wouldn't do anything to him.
Probably works for them.
Harassers soon turned up their hate to another level, said Barden, threatening to dig up his son's grave, which the harassers also claimed to have defiled. Quote, to hear that people were desecrating it and urinating on it and threatening to dig it up, he said, I don't know how to articulate to you what that feels like, but that's where we are. Here's what you do, buddy. You just don't read the comment section.
It's easy as that.
I mean, people can say anything they want on the internet. That is one of the downsides, if you will. It's also an upside, but it's a downside to anonymity. Is people, they get to act way uglier than they would normally act to your face. These people aren't going to come to your son's funeral and pee on the gravesite. They're not going to come to your son's funeral and insult you in your face because they know there's a chance you'll rear back and sock them, right? They know there's a chance that they could have some sort of actual karma, instant karma visited upon them right then for making comments like that. Now, I'm not saying that that's appropriate.
I'm wondering how many if these harassing phone calls and such ever did take place. I'm wondering how many of the people actually placing the phone calls. We know that it wasn't Alex Jones placing the phone calls.
I didn't even see anything here about a phone call. It just said comments.
I wonder how many of them were actually just FBI agents.
That's what I was thinking too.
Mm-hmm. How do you know?
How do you prove without a shadow of a doubt that it was an Alex Jones listener, not an FBI agent
and
who was?
Why wouldn't the FBI agents do that?
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
The number here is 603-283-6160, especially when an FBI agent got the second highest
That's right.
payout in this.
Wow.
One FBI agent got $70 million.
His kid didn't even have to die?
Nothing to see here.
More coming up. It's Free Talk Live. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can bring up anything you want. The number is 603-283-6160. Phones are open, and you can join us on the radio here. You can also join us online anytime you want over at freetalklive.com. Enjoy the features you'll find there. We do have our podcast feeds that you can access over at feeds.freetalklive.com. It'll link you over to the RSS feed for our Daily Digest podcast that you can subscribe to with any of your favorite podcast clients, or you can use the links there to take you to the major platforms like Spotify and iHeartMedia and those other ones that already have us. Makes it easy to download if you want to through those systems. Anyway, go to feeds.freetalklive.com and you'll find those links there. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. It's Ian, Matt, and Bonnie in the studio tonight. We're talking about Alex Jones being hit with basically $1 billion in penalties, and the case isn't even done yet. This is just step one. There's going to be a second part where he may be hit with punitive damages. This was essentially the compensation section of the case, and so there may be more to come.
But I want to know who proved $1 billion in losses in order to be compensated for those losses.
Didn't happen. There's just people
it's
saying
impossible.
Just people saying they had their feelings hurt because somebody posted internet comments.
Yeah, but shouldn't that fall under punitive damages, not compensatory? Like the whole point of a lawsuit is to get back what you lost because somebody said a bad thing about you.
Some of the plaintiffs said they were forced to move multiple times to escape the hate that was set off by Jones which he regularly repeated on his daily shows.
No way to prove that any individual who harassed them was actually doing it because of Jones, even if that really meant anything to
Right,
them.
and apparently they didn't have to prove it because Jones, as I understand it, didn't go to the trial. But James is on the line in Michigan. He wanted to weigh in on this. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, so what happened was in the Connecticut court hearing, the deposition, Alex provided more deposition than any other hearing of the type ever in the state's history. But because there was like one or two emails that he couldn't find or couldn't provide, the judge said, oh, it's pretty obvious you're guilty, never mind, move on to the compensatory.
It's another corrupt
hearing.
judge.
Wow.
Yeah. So does that mean
the judge just said you're guilty?
So it's not true that he didn't make an argument, or was that just in the Texas case? Well, I don't know why I've heard that.
No, the Texas case was based on the guilty verdict in the Connecticut.
Okay.
So with all the papers he brought forward that he did find, what did the judge not consider them because he couldn't find those couple emails or whatever?
It was something like that. He had testified for like 2-3 days straight in this deposition, but that wasn't good enough. Nothing was good enough, basically. It didn't
So
matter.
basically the whole thing was fixed from the get-go, is what it sounds like.
Sounds it.
So it was an attack on free speech at the base level.
Absolutely.
And now this is just the hearing for the media.
Yeah, to allow them to dance on Alex Jones's grave, essentially. Alex Jones, you lose, but the reality is everybody is losing because Alex Jones is being punished for things he said, not things he did. Right. He didn't threaten these people. There's no evidence presented that he ordered those people to threaten or to intimidate these families.
Why isn't the government going after the specific people that went to these people and said that they peed on, like investigate that instead of Alex Jones?
So a couple things about this hearing. The reason he said he wasn't allowed to defend himself is because the judge said that if you say certain things, you're going to be held in contempt. So he had to refuse to take the stand because any answer other than yes or no, and he would be held in contempt and go to jail.
Wow.
So he couldn't even take the stand in his own hearing. And one of the other things is, of all the people that testified, not one of them testified to the fact that they heard him say that he denied the Sandy Hook happened.
But
Not one
didn't
of
he
them could
deny it, though?
testify.
I mean, isn't that pretty much
I
true?
was listening to him back then,
Mhm.
and he questioned it a little bit, but no, he never really denied it. He was kind of like, I don't know, people died. That's kind of hard. He said there's false flags and there was problems with it, but he was never one of those hardcore, it never happened guys.
Wow.
I don't
James.
think it mattered. They just want him gone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they really
totally.
do. And then the thing is, they always go after the unpopular speech when they're targeting freedom of speech. They're going after.
I'm not so certain that was the problem. I don't think that was unpopular speech. I think it was very popular speech, and that was the problem.
That's what I'm telling you. Like, when I was in high school, that's when it happened. Like, there was a kid in one of my classes that was like, everybody needs to go watch this YouTube video because, seriously, I don't believe anything the government says anymore. And, like, everyone I knew was like, oh, did you see the video? I don't remember exactly the title or anything now, but it was a YouTube video that had lots of views, and it was, like, going through everything about how fake that shooting was and, like, all kinds of different details.
This isn't a process put in place to shut down unpopular speech. It's a process put in place to shut down popular speech.
Okay. I don't know if I believe that that's true. Jones has always been sort of on the outside of popularity. He's got a big
Everybody
following.
knows him.
Yeah, a lot of people know who he is, but that doesn't mean that they, listen to his show. Anyway, go ahead.
Not one of them could testify that they heard him say it. At least you think they would have one. Even the FBI agent that had nothing to do with anything, who's getting paid, couldn't testify that.
Wow, and also he has a show that it should have been, video of him saying something, if anything.
That was unnecessary. It was a railroad.
Yep.
Thank you for the call tonight, James. I appreciate hearing from you. The number here is 603-283-6160. I'm going to quibble with you that Jones has popular speech. He's a very unpopular person.
It's this specific thing. Like, the video I'm talking about was not Alex Jones. It was just some random YouTuber.
But the point is that generally they go after unpopular speech because it's easy to pile on somebody that is unpopular during the Bush administration. And
I also think there's been a
Obama.
concerted effort to go after people like Alex Jones and like David Icke and so forth over the years. Like a lot of the stuff that they say is totally believable, and I think it's easier for the mainstream media to say, poo-poo, America, you should poo-poo them with us. And groupthink makes people poo-poo them instead of listening to their message.
Right.
Yeah, David Icke has been banned from Twitter for like a decade.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's again because these companies believe that they can get away with doing these things to these relatively small personas. I mean, David Icke has a large following, no doubt, certainly larger than Free Talk Live, and Alex Jones as well. But Jones isn't on, he's not Rush Limbaugh. He doesn't have the same level of influence. He doesn't have the same level of fandom or whatever out there, and he certainly doesn't have as much money. So he's easier to go after. He's an easier target from
Rush
that
Limbaugh
aspect.
is dead.
Rush Limbaugh is dead. You're right about that. But Jones has never reached that level. I mean, when we were on the same network as Alex Jones, we had more radio stations than he did. Now that doesn't mean much because he's had way more internet listeners than we did. But as far as mainstream popularity, he would never be able to be carried on a lot of mainstream radio stations.
Well, that's just because
of his
they're
viewpoints.
taking that out on him.
Right. And that's what I mean. They're taking it out on him first. They want to go after the unpopular people before they go, after people like Kanye West or whatever. Now, even Kanye West is being persecuted now, just not with lawsuits at this point.
Yeah.
But they apparently Chase Bank came this week and told him they were going to shut down his business bank account. And this is ostensibly because he's been making comments online that are supposedly not popular. And so he's being outed for that and punished for that.
And we've heard all about the PayPal thing recently, where PayPal wants to they want to fine people $2,500 for passing misinformation.
Yeah, they walked that one back the next day after people blew up about it.
They walked back the misinformation, but they didn't walk back hate speech or
they still have
discrimination.
Who is a private entity to fine anyone. It was interesting. The word fine was the. Are they trying to tell us something? Are they actually just a government entity?
Are they a bank?
Apparently something they've had in their terms of service for some time, according to somebody that was looking at it the other day. There's been this $2,500 penalty assessment, or whatever the terminology is that they're using, if you violate certain terms of service. And so this would have simply expanded that to include misinformation. So they still have the $2,500 fine if you violate other terms of service.
I cannot imagine being a member of PayPal.
The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want to discuss. Inflation numbers are back, and they are still bad news. Still some of the highest inflation in 4 decades. You can comment with us. Bring up whatever's on your mind. Hour 2 is next on Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. A US jury's recommended life in prison rather than the death penalty for the young man responsible for the country's deadliest high school shooting. Nicholas Cruz was 19 when he returned to the school in Parkland, Florida that expelled him and opened fire. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
After less than a day of deliberation, a unanimous verdict from the jury: life behind bars without parole. The jury said although the murders were cold and calculated, Nicholas Cruz is a broken and mentally ill man and should not get the death penalty. Cruz was calm and showed no emotion as the verdict for each one of the 17 counts of first-degree murder was read to a courtroom packed with family members of the victims, many of whom shook their heads and whispered to each other as they tried to make sense of the jury's decision. But the judge did not issue her sentence. The state prosecutor, who's arguing for the death penalty, says more victims have yet to give their points of view. The court will reconvene on November 1st.
The committee investigating the January 6th attack on the US Capitol has voted to subpoena former President Donald Trump. The committee says it has enough evidence to push for criminal charges against multiple individuals relating to the attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
Democrat lawmaker Benny Thompson said Donald Trump must be accountable, adding the former president is required to answer for his actions. In what's expected to be the final January the 6th hearing, the committee laid out how Donald Trump inspired the violence that unfolded on Capitol Hill, and how he repeatedly tried to join the crowds at the Capitol, even after they began attacking police officers. The committee's subpoena is a formal summons for Trump to appear in person to testify under oath. However, he's now likely to fight that, even as the committee says it has sufficient information to consider criminal referrals for multiple individuals. And if that means Trump, the Department of Justice would need to make the decision to go ahead with a criminal prosecution.
NATO defence ministers have concluded a two-day meeting by reiterating their commitment to supporting Ukraine. Allies announced deliveries of air defence systems and specialist equipment to help Ukraine's forces get through the winter, ahead of a move welcomed by NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg.
NATO allies are supplying advanced systems, including artillery, air defence and armoured vehicles.
And 24,000 Venezuelan migrants will gain entry to the US under a new deal the Biden administration struck with Mexico. The plan's intended to relieve some of the pressures at the border. Almost 4 times as many Venezuelans have attempted to cross into the US via Mexico this year, many having made the dangerous trek at the hands of ruthless smuggling organisations. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more depth today at the remarkable announcement by NASA that its DART spacecraft did successfully change the path of an asteroid when it crashed into it last month 7 million miles from Earth. The double asteroid, called Didymos and Dimorphos, was targeted by NASA to test whether humans have the capacity to alter the trajectory of a potential threat. And after amassing the evidence over the past week, NASA has concluded that it successfully moved the 2 asteroids closer together. So does this mean that we're all a bit safer from the prospect of an extinction-style event like the one that killed the dinosaurs? Dr. David Whitehouse is an astronomer and astrophysicist.
This is a demonstration of principle, that the object that crashed into the Gulf of Mexico and killed the dinosaurs 67 million years ago was a darn sight bigger than Didymos and Dimorphos. And therefore you'd need to either find out that it's threatening us a long time, decades beforehand, or hit it with something substantially bigger than this. But that doesn't seem to be sort of that outrageous now, given the fact that we've done it on a small scale.
And indeed, this pioneering use of so-called deflection technology is the first ever incident of humans deliberately changing the path of a celestial object. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denzelo reporting.
Well, folks, look who came crawling back to Pennington.
That's right, Jeff Statsky. Just 4 years after leaving town to make it as a songwriter and musician on the East Coast, Mr. Hot himself, Jeff Statsky, has returned. Locals are simply stunned that Mr. Ambition himself would deign to move back to Pennington, the town he once said, quote, wasn't big enough for his music. Tuffy's Bar is even planning a welcome home party for the would-be Bob Dylan.
We got a nice cushioned stool for his precious little East Coast ass.
Hey, Jeffy boy, we got the radio on. We're still waiting to hear that big song of yours. Where is it?
Local business owners say Statsky might have just as hard a time finding work here in Pennington as he did when he was trying to be a dainty little songsmith in Coolsville.
Oh, sure, I could set him up with a job, no sweat. Oh, wait, come to think of it, we don't have any openings right now for tambourine-shaking pansies who got dick slapped by the big city.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Yeah, it's Free Talk Live. You can join the show here and bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian, Matt,
and Bonnie.
Well, inflation continues. If you were thinking it was going to go down, you would be wrong. It is pretty much right where it's been. The CPI numbers came out yesterday, and it is 8.2%, although I think last month was 8.3%, so I guess it's quote-unquote Damn.
Yeah, I want to know what Shadow Stats has to say about that.
That Shadow Stats always puts it like another 10% higher, roughly. So it's probably like 17, 18. I haven't looked at it, but we'll take a look at that in a bit. If you want to weigh in, you can bring up whatever's on your mind. We did talk about Alex Jones and the insane verdict against him, the insane compensatory so-called damages for a group of families in Connecticut that, if you believe the official story, already lost their sons and daughters, but now somebody sent them a mean message on the internet. And so, therefore, they need millions of dollars from Alex Jones, who just has an opinion, and he shared it on his broadcast radio show. And
he's not the only one. He's not the only person that has an opinion that, the events of Sandy Hook could have been set up by the government. He's not the only person.
No, and it's
they didn't go after everyone.
Well, it's scary that they could go after everyone. It's just everyone doesn't have $200 million or whatever like
his
Alex Jones
victims
does.
need $1 billion.
That's what they're saying. If you want to jump in on that, you can. Let's go, meanwhile, to Major Payne. He's on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Major.
Yeah, Alex Jones has been right probably 98% of the time. I mean, there are conspiracy theories, but most of them are corrupt and correct at the same damn time. Ian, Bonnie, I have never had you both on the radio at the same time. I want to congratulate on your nuptials.
Thank you.
Thanks, Major. I appreciate that.
Well, I am not yet, but my granddaughter's water has broke. I will be a great grandpa today.
Oh my
Congratulations.
All right, Major. Anything else you want to share tonight?
Life's harder than hell, and you better be ready to paddle up creek with a fork.
All right, brother. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it, man. The number here is 603-283-6160. According to NBC News, the annual U.S. inflation rate was little changed in September, hitting 8.2% year over year compared with August's 8.3%, reading as the pace of price increases remains at multi-decade highs, causing pain for many households. High prices for food, shelter, and medical care sent the Consumer Price Index for September up by 0.4%, compared to August's 0.1%. I think that's the other index. There's there's one that factors out energy costs or something that has gone up, quote unquote, from last month to this. And then the one that factors in energy costs went down by 0.1%, if I recall.
But isn't
correctly.
it always like putting it up against the same month the year before? So it's not that it's up since August. It's that this month it has grown more than the same month the year before, and August has grown more than the August before, right?
You may be right about that. Honestly, Bonnie, I don't know how they calculate these things.
Because when someone says it's up from last month, it's not really accurate.
Okay. I'll definitely take your word on it. Like I said, I'm not a financial expert on these matters. I just kind of look at the numbers I'm given, and that's about all I can do. But Shadow Stats, according to shadowstats.com, they have an update here based on the third quarter CPI. There's Social Security cost of living adjustment. Headline increase is 8.7% for payments beginning January 2023. Per the Shadow Stats alternate estimate, it would have been 17% had the calculations not been redefined following the spikes in 1980 and 1981. So that's what Shadow Stats does. Is they take the old calculation methods and they run those old methods on the current statistics, and they find out what the actual old numbers would have been, which were a little more honest. They probably were still dishonest in 1980.
Probably.
But a little more honest than they are today. So they're finding it to be 17%, and they're comparing that year to year. In the previous month, they say August was at an alternate estimate of 16.4%. So they're saying it's up 0.6% compared to last month. So it's not going down. That's the real takeaway here. And you don't need the government statistics to tell you that. All you have to do is look at the prices that you're paying at the grocery store.
Look at the sizes of the things you like to buy going down.
Yeah, that's right. They can't go down much further than they currently are. I mean, they've slimmed down over the years already. And then what we found out what they're doing also, besides slimming down on size, is they're cutting back on quality as well. Lower quality ingredients are being used in some products. They're using more filler in some products, and if you're not paying close attention to the ingredients list, if you're not paying close attention to the nutrition facts,
then you're getting poisoned with soybean oil.
Well, that was probably already true. You probably already were getting soybean oil, but now they're cutting out protein in some products that we found out. It was mouseprint.org that revealed this recently. They found that one of the vegetable oils, which of course you probably shouldn't be using anyway, they were cutting that with water.
No, it was like nature balanced butter, so margarine that's made out of vegetable oil.
That's what I meant. Yeah, thanks.
So they cut some. It used to be like, I don't know, 50% vegetable oil. Now it's like 30%, and they added more water, something like that.
Oh, so it's more hydrogenated than it used to be.
Yep, and they rolled that back because people were complaining about the taste.
Yeah, people noticed that they'd cut it so far back. So if you want to jump in here, you can. The number 603-283-6160. That's basically, there's not much more to say. That the inflation is going to continue because there's no reason for them to stop it. They're not going to, even if it does go down, if the official numbers go down, that doesn't mean the price you're paying for groceries is going to go down.
If only there was some type of currency that was resistant to, government
interference
and so forth. How would the world be if only there was such an idea available to everyone?
I wish I was the one that thought of that.
I think you're getting to alternative currencies like cryptocurrency or gold and silver.
Yeah, I like all three of those things. Ammo never goes down in value. You can store that.
That's true. So again, if you want to jump in here, 603-283-6160.
Does it not expire?
Keep it dry. Keep it safe. But generally, there has been some ammunition kept in some absolutely horrid condition for several decades that has still gone off.
Still usable?
Edge. Yeah.
Wow. Let's see. I had another related story to this. I don't know where I put it. Oh, another economic, energy-related story. Did you guys hear that Saudi Arabia has revealed the Biden administration contacted them and asked them to hold off on cutting back their production for 1 month?
Oh, really?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's some of the big news today is that apparently, I don't know if it was Joe Biden himself or one of his people contacted Saudi Arabia, and they knew that apparently that OPEC was going to cut oil production, but they begged them to hold off until after the midterms.
Oh, I see. I was like, why 1 month?
These politicians and all their lackeys are just the dirtiest people in the world. Absolute filth.
And they didn't, obviously. OPEC went ahead and cut the production. They didn't do what the Biden administration wanted them to. They
Seems
cut
like they also
immediately.
Revealed that the Biden administration asked them that.
Right. So it makes them look pretty bad. I suspect it's not going to have much of an effect on the election because the two sides are so entrenched. You get the Democrats are going full on abortion is their top issue. You get the Republicans going, oh, we're going to somehow save the economy when, they were still printing money under the Trump administration.
Yep.
So it's not like anybody should believe
the first free money giveaways were under Trump, weren't they?
Exactly. That's right. And they were voted for by both sides.
Mm-hmm. And the faulty vaccine was first promoted under Trump by Trump.
Trump fast-tracked it, remember? He was patting himself on the back for
Warp
that.
Warp speed.
Yeah. So that's in the news as well. The number, though, that you can join us at, 603-283-6160. I've got actually an editorial piece from Ross Ulbricht that we could share coming up. He's writing From Behind Bars in Prison. Since you brought up Bitcoin, Matt, we can talk about that. He says, headline, block by block, facing life in prison, Bitcoin's resilience inspires me. So we'll
love that guy.
Ross Ulbricht has to say in moments. And you can join the show at 603-283-6160 here on Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
As if Amazon Prime wasn't worth it just for the free shipping and hundreds of movies, thousands of TV shows, and millions of songs on Alexa, I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Browse Amazon Warehouse for deeply discounted open box deals on computers, TVs, unlocked phones, lots of returned merchandise, and Amazon Renewed sells refurbished merch. In both cases, like new, and guaranteed replacement or refund for 90 days if your purchase doesn't work as expected. I could not tell that several refurbished items I've bought weren't new. Manufacturers like Apple and Samsung also sell refurbs on their own websites. Most come with a new battery, and they carry a 1-year warranty, so they're new to you. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. And if you're ready to start learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, you can click Get Started at the top of the page at Bitcoin.com. And there will be some introductory information, like some videos that you can watch to give you the basics about these amazing technologies that are world-changing in the world of finance. And the government hates. They want to try to get rid of this stuff because it's a threat to the system, a threat to the status quo. It enables amazing new technologies like the Silk Road, which isn't a new technology, but it was in 2011 when Ross Ulbricht created the Silk Road, the world's first underground drug marketplace. Now, there were other things for sale on the Silk Road that weren't illegal, but it was most noteworthy because you could buy things that you weren't supposed to be able to buy, like cannabis or mushrooms or ecstasy or, you name it. It was absolutely fascinating. But you should learn about Bitcoin because it's a world-changing technology, and it can empower the individual, brings the power of money out of the hands of the state and the banks to the individual. You go to bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page to learn more. I've got an editorial piece from that very Ross Ulbricht, written from behind bars in federal prison where he was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years.
He's been in for 10 years now.
That's correct.
Started his 10th year.
Yeah, I think he was arrested in 2013. Yeah, 2013, October of 2013, if I recall correctly. It was about 2 years after the start of the Silk Road. They arrested him, and he's been behind bars ever since, sadly. And it's really tragic because
it's criminal.
Yeah, because he actually helped people. He actually helped save lives, in my opinion, because the Silk Road took the dangers of the black marketplace, which can include getting robbed when you're just trying to buy, some cannabis or whatever. It can include getting fake product from dealers, unscrupulous dealers. It can include
even danger for the dealers, like not getting shot out by another group of people who were selling drugs.
And so having the Silk Road changed the entirety of the black market and made it a lot safer because now you could buy your drugs without taking the insane risks of meeting some guy in a sketchy parking lot or a back alley or something like that.
Well, the government should have just thanked him for helping with the war on drugs, right? Helping make drugs more safe and things like that, right?
He deserves an award, honestly, for the work that he did.
An actual Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah. Instead, they're giving it to Ben Bernanke.
Yeah, that's genius.
So
isn't he like a banker from the Federal Reserve?
He was the top.
He's the chairman.
The chairman, of the board. Wow. So the number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. I want to jump into this story because we can go on about Ross and the railroading that he had in this federal court, which was a total sham. And you can go to freeross.org. You can click on Railroaded there. It's a documentary film. It's a text file. A website that you can. There's an audio version, so web, video, text. You can take it in however you want, but they've got all the detail, all the ugly details of all the corruption that went on the part of the federal government in this case. We would spend hours if we tried to recap all of that.
Another super shady judge that got a nice promotion after she railroaded him.
So, and remember, all this guy did was make a website. It's important to remember, he's not a heroin dealer. He's just a guy who made a website.
No, he tried to hire people to kill people.
Never happened.
Never ever happened.
They said
didn't
that
happen.
They didn't
it wasn't even brought
it.
up in court because
they dropped the charges. Yeah. So anyway, here's what he has to say on his blog, because he's blogging from inside prison. He's probably handwriting these letters, sending them to loved ones, and they're transcribing them at rossulbricht.medium.com. He says, much more is being said about Bitcoin these days than when I was put in prison. On October 1st, 2022, I started my 10th year locked in this cage. Right now, as I put pen to page, the afternoon sun beams through the bars of my window, and the murmur of the other prisoners snakes under my cell door. Over the years, I've heard people say all kinds of things about Bitcoin. I've heard that Bitcoin is dead and that Bitcoin is the future. I've heard that Bitcoin is bad for the environment and that Bitcoin will set us free. But I've noticed that Bitcoin doesn't seem to care what we say about it. Not the exchange, of course. That's driven by the whims of people like all financial markets. I'm talking about Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin doesn't have ears. What we say doesn't change it. Barring a society-level catastrophe, Bitcoin will keep adding a block every 10 minutes forever. That's the point. Through all the ups and downs since Bitcoin's birth more than 13 years ago, despite the hype, despite the naysayers, despite everything, Bitcoin has never faltered. He says, I can't say the same for myself. But then again...
Wait, before you go on, I just want to say that, that's a really beautiful description of Bitcoin. It reminds me of, just like natural law. It doesn't care what you think about it. It's going to, dispense karma the way that needs to be dispensed. Just like Bitcoin, it's not something that can be controlled by a government because they want it to work a certain way.
No, it's going to continue doing the thing that it does, whether they like it or not. And they are going to try their best to control the people who use Bitcoin. But I think the point is here that the technology, the protocol, the programming will continue to run as long as there are humans out there who are willing to run it. And right now there's I believe over 10,000 people running Bitcoin full nodes last time I saw the numbers. He says, I can't say the same for myself, but then again, I am merely human. A couple of years after Bitcoin got started, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I made Silk Road, an anonymous online market. Of course, at the time, I didn't know it was a mistake. I thought it was a great idea. I thought I was putting Bitcoin to good use and giving people privacy and freedom. When illegal drugs were listed, I thought that was okay too, because I believe drugs should be legalized. Never mind that they were outlawed, and I was risking everything that I held dear. And I get it. I get why he believes that this was a mistake. Obviously, he's in prison for the rest of his life. How could he think anything besides, that particular viewpoint? But the reality is what he did was a huge step forward for the marketplace. And anybody who has used the black market, who has used any of these sites that are like the Silk Road that have sprung up over the years, you have Ross Ulbricht to thank for making that technology available, for making it popular and inspiring all of the copycats that have come to fill his shoes since. By the way, none of which have been sentenced as harshly. When they've taken down other websites that are like the Silk Road, these other guys are getting nearly nothing by comparison. I mean, maybe 5-10 years. Ross is in prison for 2 life sentences plus 40 years. So, there's a huge discrepancy between how he was sentenced compared to basically everyone else in the same industry.
Incalculable how much good he's done for the world with the amount of Bitcoin spreading that the Silk Road did. Like, people had to figure out how to use Bitcoin because they wanted to get, their drugs or whatever they're buying online.
Yeah, the Silk Road was the first killer app for Bitcoin. It really was an amazing technology that really proved Bitcoin as a currency. Yeah, gave people an incentive to use it. But I understand why he feels the way he does. He says, a couple of years later, I was thrown in prison for drug trafficking and given 2 life sentences without parole plus 40 years. I was falsely portrayed in the media as a violent drug kingpin. The story of Silk Road was reduced to a cops and robbers cliche. I more than faltered, I hit rock bottom, and I have been here ever since. He's got more to say. We'll share that with you coming up here. More of the thoughts, the writing of Ross Ulbricht here. The number 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. A US jury's recommended life in prison rather than the death penalty for the young man responsible for the country's deadliest high school shooting. Nicholas Cruz was 19 when he returned to the school in Parkland, Florida that expelled him and opened fire. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
After less than a day of deliberation, a unanimous verdict from the jury: life behind bars without parole. The jury said although the murders were cold and calculated, Nicholas Cruz is a broken and mentally ill man and should not get the death penalty. Cruz was calm and showed no emotion as the verdict for each one of the 17 counts of first-degree murder was read to a courtroom packed with family members of the victims, many of whom shook their heads and whispered to each other as they tried to make sense of the jury's decision. But the judge did not issue her sentence. The state prosecutor, who's arguing for the death penalty, says more victims have yet to give their points of view. The court will reconvene on November 1st.
The committee investigating the January 6th attack on the US Capitol has voted to subpoena former President Donald Trump. The committee says it has enough evidence to push for criminal charges against multiple individuals relating to the attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
Democrat lawmaker Benny Thompson said Donald Trump must be accountable, adding the former president is required to answer for his actions. In what's expected to be the final January the 6th hearing, the committee laid out how Donald Trump inspired the violence that unfolded on Capitol Hill, and how he repeatedly tried to join the crowds at the Capitol, even after they began attacking police officers. The committee's subpoena is a formal summons for Trump to appear in person to testify under oath. However, he's now likely to fight that, even as the committee says it has sufficient information to consider criminal referrals for multiple individuals. And if that means Trump, the Department of Justice would need to make the decision to go ahead with the criminal prosecution.
NATO defence ministers have concluded a 2-day meeting by reiterating their commitment to supporting Ukraine. Allies announced deliveries of air defence systems and specialist equipment to help Ukraine's forces get through the winter, ahead of a move welcomed by NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg.
NATO allies are supplying advanced systems, including artillery, air defence and armoured vehicles.
And 24,000 Venezuelan migrants will gain entry to the US under a new deal the Biden administration struck with Mexico. The plan's intended to relieve some of the pressures at the border. Almost 4 times as many Venezuelans have attempted to cross into the US via Mexico this year, many having made the dangerous trek at the hands of ruthless smuggling organisations. From bureaus worldwide, this is
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bullion Max. We've been talking about alternatives to using the evil U.S. dollar and other fiat monies, other central bank monies from around the planet. There are alternatives. Of course, we already talked about Bitcoin, but for those of you that are a little more interested in the precious metals side of things, you ought to check out bullionmax.com/FTL. You can grab the gold backs there, which are amazingly beautiful, interchangeable money, gold money that you can actually carry in your wallet. I've got some in my wallet. I spent 8 gold backs yesterday on some of the best gourmet pizza known to man at Little Zoe's Pizza here in Keene.
And I really like the take and bake version, by the way. I know we're talking about gold backs, but speaking of Little Zoe's,
yeah,
we took it take and bake the other day, and baking it ourselves was really good because you can make it as soft as you want.
Yep.
Free plug for Little Zoe's because their pizza is delicious.
Really good.
So gold backs are for people that want to actually spend gold. For the first time in generations, it is possible to actually use small amounts of gold. Very small amounts. 1/1000th of an ounce. You can get those gold backs over at bullionmax.com/FTL. Of course, they've got all the other gold and silver products you might be looking for if you want to get solid ounce pieces. They got all those things. So if you're looking to just stack gold or silver, they can hook you up with some of the best prices on that.
But gold backs are the bell of the ball, though. I mean, we ordered Chinese food last week, and I tipped the delivery guy in gold, and I had to explain it in gold backs, and I had to explain it to him. And I said, they're worth about $4 a piece. And you have 12 or 15 bucks in your hand. And he's like, what are they? They're gold? And I'm like, they're real gold. So he's like, what do I do with them? I was like, you hide them.
Well,
you spend them, you hide them, whatever you want to do with them.
I think when you first get a gold back as a waiter or a driver or something like that, you're likely to put it away. But once you keep getting them, because if you keep spending these things, they keep circulating them, eventually you're going to get more and more of them. So like the guy that's the waiter over at Funky Noodle here in town, he's been getting gold backs from me every single week.
Now, let's not blow his show.
Out there.
Let's not blow his cover.
Well, I'm not saying who he is, but I mean, all you got to do is come to Social Sundays and you'll see him loading up on the gold backs.
He loves that stuff.
For tips. And he's got plenty of gold backs. Dude could easily go out and spend some of them, and he'd still have some in savings. Right. So they're intended to be spent. Like I said, if you want to stack gold or silver, just get the ounces and throw them in a safe because you're not going to be able to do anything with them.
But if you want
gold backs, you can use them.
Well, you can stack gold backs too because they are gold, and that doesn't have to be current day money. That might have to be, apocalypse money. It's gold.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say it sure beats having to make shards or shavings is the word we were looking for that one day of your gold to be able to buy some smaller. Yeah.
Check them out at bullionmax.com/FTL. The Wyoming ones just came out, by the way, so you want to take a look at those if you haven't seen them yet. They are gorgeous, as you might expect. So back to Ross Ulbricht and his blog site, rossulbricht.medium.com. He is in prison, as he points out, for 2 life sentences with no parole, plus 40 years. He says he was falsely portrayed as a violent drug kingpin, and he hit rock bottom. But Bitcoin never faltered. Through the rise and fall of Silk Road, through the relentless years of my incarceration, through competition and catastrophe, Bitcoin keeps going one block at a time like clockwork. As Bitcoin has marched on, I've struggled to rejoin the world outside of my cage. Year after year, my family, friends, supporters, and I have been working toward my freedom so I can have a second chance at life, but I'm tired. I'm burned out. I want this nightmare to end, and I don't know if it ever will, no matter how hard we work at it. Before I came to prison, I knew nothing of hard drugs. Since then, I've been locked in 8 by 10-foot cells with lifelong addicts for months on end. I have heard their stories and seen what has become of them. I have faced the fact that by making Silk Road, I played a role in damaging many lives. And Ross, that's just not true.
Not true. My older brother, that I love very much, has been addicted to meth for more than a decade. He's tried to kill himself with it. And I have seen firsthand what it's done to his family and my family. And it's still his choice. It's not his drug. I'm never one of those people who are like, oh, these evil drug dealers dealing drugs to my brother. It's his choice. He's making the choice to take it all the time. He goes to rehab and supposedly gets better and then gets back on meth. It's a horrible cycle, and I'm not trying to blame him for getting addicted or anything like that. And I love him very much, but I would never say that if he bought it off the Silk Road that it would be Ross Ulbricht's fault instead of his own fault.
Right. I get why he's saying that. Maybe he feels like he needs to say it to get out of jail.
Well, that's just
whatever.
speculation.
If that's the case, then I support him saying that all day. If he thinks that's going to get him out of the can, I want to see that kid out of the can.
I do too, and I don't blame him.
I don't
for that.
care what he says to get himself out of there. Do it.
With Elaine Brown, she said
Same thing.
She ate crow, and she made it sound like she had changed her mind about paying taxes, and they let her out. They let her out of a cage. So maybe it'll work for him. I don't know. But what he's saying is just not true. The people who used the drugs that they bought on the Silk Road would have bought them in the streets.
Yep, exactly. And then they would have been facing a lot worse conditions.
They probably would have gotten fake drugs on a lot of cases. Those would be one of those worst conditions because when you buy drugs in the street, you are not buying from someone who's subject to open market competition. So a lot of that stuff is just straight up fake. And it's dangerous.
Yep.
I mean, it's dangerous because it's heroin or whatever.
Yeah, but
in the
when you're a
first place.
seller online and you have a reputation to uphold with your feedback rating, you're going to start selling better product. It's going to be more honest with your product, and it saves lives when you do that.
That's right. Silk Road saved lives.
Silk Road saved lives. And Ross, if there's any chance that Ross is going to hear this, or Lynn can pass it along to him, we love you.
Yeah,
and we think about you, and we're very thankful for who you are and what what you've been saddled with. We feel for you, we really do.
He says, I don't even think about drug war politics anymore. I just know I could never promote drug use again, whether legal or illegal.
And the thing about that sentence was the one that kind of irritated me when I saw that, because Ross doesn't think about drug war politics anymore, it doesn't mean people aren't needlessly going, their lives aren't being ruined for the choice to own a drug every single day in the United States alone. It's just that's not my issue anymore. I want to get out of jail. And sorry, I'm not trying to say that he's a bad person, but it's just I don't really agree with this whole thing. I think it's a load of crap, and if it's going to get him out of jail, I don't think it's going to get him out of jail either. So
I don't think
that's
it will
the other
either,
thing.
because Joe Biden's a monster and he's one of the king drug warriors. And just because Joe Biden has decided to pardon all of the marijuana possession cases at the federal level recently, and He should be praised for that, no doubt about it. That doesn't mean that the war on drugs is going to end.
Should he really be praised for letting some of the people get pardoned that he was responsible for having their lives ruined in the first place? And not even all of them? Not even all of the drugs?
It would be nice if he said he was sorry, but you're not going to get that from politicians. I mean, Kamala Harris is completely ignoring the fact that she herself put marijuana users in prison.
A lot of them.
In California. And now she's acting like, oh, this shouldn't have happened. Well, she didn't apologize. So, yeah, they don't have a heart. This is just a political move.
They're psychopaths.
This is a political maneuver to help the Democrats win some votes in the midterms. That's all it is. But it does result in a few thousand people having this conviction wiped off their records.
I heard that there weren't actually any convicts to set free.
No, of course not. This is just possession charges.
Right.
So you get a federal possession charge, you probably get a fine, and they set you loose. They arrest
How
you and
do
cut
you
you
get
loose.
a federal possession charge?
Go walk up to a federal agent at any park, any federal park, and you will be arrested
on a
if
military
you're
base.
holding a marijuana
military
cigarette.
base. Aha.
Not just military bases, but if you're at a federal park, anywhere that's a federal, like you're at the Washington, D.C., at a monument or something like that, any federal property, if you're caught with marijuana, that's a possession charge.
So any law you break while on federal property is technically a federal offense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
on
nutty to
the
think
military base that I lived on, like anytime someone got in trouble for anything, like stealing or anything, it was a federal charge.
Right. If you are in a state where marijuana is legal for recreational purposes and you carry it onto federal property, you can be arrested for possession of marijuana.
That's nutty.
And those are the people that they're pardoning, the people that have just a simple possession charge. You usually don't go to prison for that. So there's no one to cut loose from a prison cell. In this case, although they should cut loose everybody who's been convicted of possessing drugs. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And you can bring up absolutely anything you want to discuss. We're talking about Ross Ulbricht. He has blogged over at Medium.com. It's rossulbricht.medium.com. We're sharing his latest piece where he is understandably pretty depressed about being in prison for 2 life sentences plus 40 years for running a website. Just worth reminding you that's all he did. All right, I think in the beginning he might have sold some mushrooms on the website, but for the most part, he just ran this website. And
something that's not even as dangerous as the thing that Joe Biden is pardoning people for possessing.
You mean cannabis?
I mean, mushrooms are definitely not habit forming. You don't want to keep doing that over and over again.
That's true, Bonnie. Actually, there was a list created by Professor David Nutt. He's the former drug czar, basically, of the UK, who quit his job, I think, 10, 12, 15 years ago, and came out in favor of ending the war on drugs. And he came up with this list of drugs and their kind of personal and social consequences, and came up with a rating for each of these drugs. And mushrooms were at the bottom of that list. They were the least dangerous to both the individual and to quote-unquote society of any other drug. It was pretty interesting.
Well, I would guess that humans evolved with magic mushrooms.
Yeah, actually, there's a whole Terrence McKenna book that Bonnie and I
the Stone
read
Ape.
about
Is that the Stone Ape? Or no, what's it called?
I don't remember what the book's name
Yeah,
was.
I remember that.
I can't remember off the top of my head, yeah.
It was good, though. It was very interesting, and it did go back through the entire history of humanity and kind of traced, where mushrooms were likely involved and how that helped us evolve.
They grow everywhere. I think there's 6 species that grow in New Hampshire.
Wow.
There's like a dozen
which
different
ones are
species that grow.
psychedelic?
All the ones that are psychedelic.
Really?
Way more than 6 mushrooms grow in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
Okay,
New
gotcha.
Hampshire's a very, very fungusy place. I mean, if you go into the woods around, there's a ton of fungus. And I'm kind of into mycology. I like fungus. So I know that there's 6. I'm not into psychedelic mushrooms, but I know that there are 6 types of psychedelic mushrooms that grow in New Hampshire naturally, and I think there's 13 that grow in upstate New York naturally, and they're literally everywhere, all around the world. You can find a hallucinogenic mushroom anywhere in the world.
So
The Food of the Gods. That's the name of the Terrence McKenna book.
So back to Ross Ulbricht. He's got a few more thoughts here, and he is reflecting on what he believes were some lives that might have been damaged by his role in making the Silk Road, and we vehemently disagreed that, while there may be some people that they had a drug problem and they got some drugs on Silk Road, they probably already had the drug problem and would have gotten those drugs somewhere else if they couldn't get them on Silk Road. They probably would have paid more and probably gotten worse drugs.
I'm sure that happened way more often than somebody was like, you know what, for the first time I'm going to try meth now that it's available on Silk Road. You can just find it in your town.
So we believe that he saved lives through creating this particular product, but we understand that Ross isn't going to help his chances to get out by bragging about the lives that he saved and pointing out the technology that he brought actually improved the black market and improved safety, improved and again likely made people survive rather than die.
So he goes on. He says that how could I promote the use of drugs if I would be horrified to learn that someone I loved became addicted? All I would think of is the men I've come to know whose lives who have been ruined. Well, look, there's no such thing as just promoting the use of drugs. I don't know anyone who wants to end the war on drugs whose opinion is, yeah, just do them all.
Yeah, just do every drug, and there's nothing wrong with doing any drug.
Right. There's some drugs are, like, all drugs are not created equal. Some drugs are better than others. Some drugs have certain purposes in life. And many of those things we haven't yet really discerned because science hasn't really had a chance to study these things in any significant way. There's been a few studies here and there that have suggested that psychedelic mushrooms might help people break addictions to alcohol.
But no matter what, if there's somebody proving that or not, it's your God-given birthright to discover that yourself and to
Absolutely.
It's all yours.
Work with these medicines yourself.
But I'm just saying, there's no one out there who's just across the board that I've ever known. You know, even some of the biggest drug users I've ever known still have their preferences, right? They like some, but they don't like others, and they have their reasons for that. So what I was saying, we haven't yet uncovered the benefits of many of these drugs. We've seen little hints about it. So we know that psychedelics like mushrooms, for instance, can help people defeat depression.
Mm-hmm.
Like end depression? That's
and PTSD.
Huge. PTSD also.
Sure, I would like to see how it works against like things like dementia and Alzheimer's and
right.
What mushrooms say if you don't have any experience with things like that, I'll tell you one thing that they definitely do. These hallucinogens is they make your brain flex like a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if you've got a brain that's on the way out, it might be a good idea to get that thing into the gym a little bit and make it do some push-ups, and that's kind of what
that's a good point.
Mushrooms will do.
Yeah, they can light up different areas of the brain.
Yeah, they can light up different
don't.
areas of the brain, make the synapses fire where they stopped firing a long time ago. It's important to do that kind of thing. And I'm not saying that, everybody has to, we're not going to take every Alzheimer's patient out there and just trip the heck out of them on a full cap. But, take a little stem and steep it in some tea every morning for them. It may actually do something. I would like to see research on that.
Well, and also speaking of older people, those are usually the folks that suffer from Alzheimer's. Speaking of elderly folks who might be looking down towards death's door at some point, use of psychedelic drugs under the right circumstances, under a doctor or therapist circumstances, can help people deal with their impending demise.
What they do now? They just put them on a different type of drug that's way worse for you, like Percocet or something like that, Valium, Vicodin, all those things, painkillers that are just really not good for you at all and actually addictive and just numb you to where you aren't even there for the process of dying. It's worse for your family members because you're like a vegetable and you just continue getting worse, and if there was even any chance for you to get better.
So, yeah, I mean, again, Ross, when you advocate for drug use, no one does that. You're just saying, hey, we should have the freedom to use these things. We should be able to experiment with them. We should be able to figure out what they do. Mm-hmm. We should be able to use them for specific purposes without having to ask permission.
At the very least, we shouldn't be or have our lives ruined for possessing even the worst of drugs.
Right, because
you're already choosing to ruin your life if you're on meth.
Prison isn't going to help you.
Nope.
It's going to make things worse because now you don't have a job, now you don't have a home, and when you get out, you probably don't have many friends left.
If the government
you can't vote, you don't have any gun rights, you can't sit jury duty, you can't write. I mean, it doesn't help at all. Like putting people in prison is not rehabilitative; it's hobbling. If anything, they serve their term and they're not even whole Americans when they get out again.
Final paragraph from Ross. He says, I've been through many phases during my imprisonment: hopelessness, fear, guilt, acceptance, boredom, feverish depression, and all the while, Bitcoin keeps going. Today, I take inspiration from Bitcoin. I will keep going, day by day, just taking the next step over and over. I will keep adding the next block. Either I will regain my freedom, or at the end of my life, I can look back and say, at least I tried.
Attaboy.
If you want to help Ross, one thing you can do is sign the petition at freeross.org. It's been up for many years. If you've already signed it, it's the same petition. If you've already signed it, share it. Get the word out there about his case, and maybe if enough people can get behind him, maybe some politician, probably not going to be Joe Biden, but maybe the next one, will look at this case and give him clemency.
Or write Joe Biden and tell him that that's what would help him in the midterms for you.
That's a good point. That is an approach. So check him out at freeross.org. If you're new to the case, if you don't know anything about Ross Ulbricht or the Silk Road, you can do a lot of digging on that website. There's a lot of really well-researched information that will tell you the story from the whole tragic story from beginning to end that includes insane levels of corruption by federal government agents, two of whom went to prison themselves.
FBI
over
guys,
this.
right?
Yeah, well,
And that rarely even happens. That's how bad it was.
That's how bad. Yeah, one of them was Secret Service, and I believe the other one might have been DEA or FBI. I forget which.
So either way, it's, I mean, if there's no possible way that Ross could have been framed for any of this when two of the investigators that were railroading him went to prison themselves.
Yeah, that doesn't throw any evidence into question or anything.
Doesn't throw any red flags in my life at all.
So you can bring up anything that you want here. The number is 603-283-6160. Lots of other things in the news. Tulsi Gabbard stirred up some controversy and discussion this week. You remember her. She was one of the Democratic presidential or vice presidential candidates. She is now claiming she's leaving the Democratic Party.
Yeah, for what?
She didn't say what she's joining.
She's not a libertarian,
No,
FYI.
she's not. But all of a sudden, right before she made this announcement, she showed up on the internet with pictures of her shooting guns and
in
saying
like tight pants.
Changed her opinion about guns.
Great.
And all of a sudden, she's no longer a Democrat.
Guess what, Tulsi? You're still not a libertarian.
There's more coming up here in moments.
Shall not be infringed, Tulsi.
Yep, 603-283-6160. Hour number 3 is on the way. You can join the show. Bring up whatever's on your mind here on Free Talk Live. Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. A US jury's recommended life in prison rather than the death penalty for the young man responsible for the country's deadliest high school shooting. Nicholas Cruz was 19 when he returned to the school in Parkland, Florida that expelled him and opened fire. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
After less than a day of deliberation, a unanimous verdict from the jury: life behind bars without parole. The jury said although the murders were cold and calculated, Nicholas Cruz is a broken and mentally ill man and should not get the death penalty. Cruz was calm and showed no emotion as the verdict for each one of the 17 counts of first-degree murder was read to a courtroom packed with family members of the victims, many of whom shook their heads and whispered to each other as they tried to make sense of the jury's decision. But the judge did not issue her sentence. The state prosecutor, who's arguing for the death penalty, says more victims have yet to give their points of view. The court will reconvene on November 1st.
The committee investigating the January 6th attack on the US Capitol has voted to subpoena former President Donald Trump. The committee says it has enough evidence to push for criminal charges against multiple individuals relating to the attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
Democrat lawmaker Benny Thompson said Donald Trump must be accountable, adding the former president is required to answer for his actions. In what's expected to be the final January the 6th hearing, the committee laid out how Donald Trump inspired the violence that unfolded on Capitol Hill, and how he repeatedly tried to join the crowds at the Capitol, even after they began attacking police officers. The committee's subpoena is a formal summons for Trump to appear in person to testify under oath. However, he's now likely to fight that, even as the committee says it has sufficient information to consider criminal referrals for multiple individuals. And if that means Trump, the Department of Justice would need to make the decision to go ahead with a criminal prosecution.
NATO defence ministers have concluded a two-day meeting by reiterating their commitment to supporting Ukraine. Allies announced deliveries of air defence systems and specialist equipment to help Ukraine's forces get through the winter, ahead of a move welcomed by NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg.
NATO allies are supplying advanced systems, including artillery, air defense, and armored vehicles.
And 24,000 Venezuelan migrants will gain entry to the US under a new deal the Biden administration struck with Mexico. The plan's intended to relieve some of the pressures at the border. Almost 4 times as many Venezuelans have attempted to cross into the US via Mexico this year, many having made the dangerous trek at the hands of ruthless smuggling organisations. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more depth today at the remarkable announcement by NASA that its DART spacecraft did successfully change the path of an asteroid when it crashed into it last month 7 million miles from Earth. The double asteroid, called Didymos and Dimorphos, was targeted by NASA to test whether humans have the capacity to alter the trajectory of a potential threat. And after amassing the evidence over the past week, NASA has concluded that it successfully moved the 2 asteroids closer together. So does this mean that we're all a bit safer from the prospect of an extinction-style event like the one that killed the dinosaurs? Dr. David Whitehouse is an astronomer and astrophysicist.
This is a demonstration of principle. The object that crashed into the Gulf of Mexico and killed the dinosaurs 67 million years ago was a darn sight bigger than Didymos and Dimorphos. And therefore you'd need to either find out that it's threatening us a long time, decades beforehand, or hit it with something substantially bigger than this. But that doesn't seem to be sort of that outrageous now, given the fact that we've done it on a small scale.
And indeed, this pioneering use of so-called deflection technology is the first ever incident of humans deliberately changing the path of a celestial object. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denzelo reporting.
According to attendees of a karaoke night at Charlie's Bar and Grill, a man 30 seconds into singing Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror better get his act together and get it together fast.
From the get-go, coming in late on that first line, singing totally off-key. He needs to shape up and get his head in the game pronto.
Honestly, he needs to get serious right now or get the f*** off the stage. I mean, what does he think this is? Living on a prayer?
Claiming that this is turning into a train wreck, eyewitnesses say they are embarrassed for the man who has missed several key words despite staring at the prompter the entire time.
You know, he could hit every last note for the remainder of the song, and I still don't know if that would be enough to turn this thing around.
Man in the Mirror is the big leagues, so you better show up with your A game.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, and of course you can bring up anything you want here as we kick off the third hour of the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. It's Ian, Matt, and Bonnie joining you here tonight. Of course, you can always bring up anything you want to discuss. It's completely up to you sometimes what we will talk about here, but otherwise we bring up things that we think you'll find interesting. And it looks like Shakira is still under attack in Europe, over in Spain. She's apparently paying up the tax so-called authorities wasn't enough to satisfy them. They want blood. They want to put her in a prison cell.
So Shakira did nothing wrong.
Yeah, and we can talk about that coming up here. Tulsi Gabbard also making the headlines for leaving the Democratic Party. We'll see what she had to say as well. But you know what? Since we were talking about Russ Ulbricht in the last hour, I actually have a different story related to him. It's a letter to Ross Ulbricht. So we just read a letter from a blog post from Ross Ulbricht, which was posted on his Medium account at medium.com. It was rossulbricht.medium.com. This was written over at moneyandstate.com by a longtime supporter and fan, listener of Free Talk Live, Eric Voorhees. He is the founder of a great cryptocurrency company called Shapeshift, which interestingly decentralized itself last year. They were a centralized corporation, and Shapeshift decided that they wanted to become a decentralized autonomous organization. So
And they can do that because they're shapeshifters.
And Eric is no longer in charge as a result of that. So he used to be the CEO, and now he's just Eric Voorhees, who's one of many holders of the Shapeshift Fox tokens. That's a whole other story about the success story of that company becoming no longer a corporation and becoming a decentralized autonomous organization. That's not the point of his letter, though, where he wrote a letter to Ross Ulbricht, which was brought to him via a friend's visit to see him in prison in September. He says Ross has been caged, double life sentence plus 40 years for the quote-unquote crime of operating a website, which is Silk Road, which enabled consenting adults to buy and sell various drugs deemed illegal by the U.S. government. Silk Road made drug use safer for thousands of people and was one of the early demonstrations of Bitcoin's power to enable peaceful economic interaction. And then he says you can learn more at freeross.org. He says if we refer to ourselves as a society of free individuals, prohibition must end. So this is Eric's letter to Ross. He says, hello, Ross. Perhaps you remember me from several years ago. My name is Eric Voorhees. I've been a Bitcoiner forever and had the great privilege of meeting you back in 2017, I believe, at the prison near Pueblo, Colorado. Your mother was kind enough to make the arrangements. This letter comes to you through Renee, a mutual friend or rather of one of my good friends, Danielle. I received from you a letter months later, and it remains a treasured possession sitting in my desk drawer. For myself, Danielle, and our entire circle of close friends, your story and your struggle remain frequently in our thoughts. I can imagine the feeling from inside prison is one of being forgotten, wondering whether those on the outside remember who or where you are. Well, we absolutely do. We speak of you often at our barbecues, we lament your imprisonment, we discuss your bravery, and we wonder if someday, somehow, you'll be released. Back when we met, I told you that what you did inspired a great many people, and indeed kickstarted a revolution in how human beings interact economically. I know your goal was to demonstrate peaceful interaction among humans, reforming an otherwise chaotic and dangerous market. You accomplished this, despite the horrible consequences which befell you afterward.
As they say, as my own comment, there's no good deed goes unpunished. And the federal government in the United States is punishing him harder than anyone else in his position.
It's because they're not the people who get to determine what is moral and what isn't. They just go after people who do things against their own interests, which are completely immoral.
Yeah, they want to continue the war on drugs, and they want to keep filling their prison cells with warm bodies, and they are mad because Ross Ulbricht made their job harder.
They're making too much money with the cartels because of things being illegal for people to make it easy for drugs to be dealt safely.
Well, yeah, Bonnie, they've long said that the CIA is actually secretly dealing drugs.
Yep.
And funding itself through that. So,
and who would ever be able to investigate and figure out? I mean, we don't have the power to do that. The only thing is the government investigating itself if anything ever came out.
That's not going to happen.
Even if they did, they'd just be like, okay, nothing to see here. We investigated ourselves like they always do.
Eric says, one thing that struck me from our discussion years ago was your disconnection from the state of Bitcoin's development and advancement, and perhaps from the state of the broader world, unable to witness how it was changing. To help remedy that just a bit, I'd like to use this letter to convey a couple of insights about the world from which you've been alienated, the world you had an immense part in shaping, regardless of whether you recognize it from within your prison. Because, look, as an aside, if you're behind bars, I mean, thankfully I've never gone to prison, but I've been in jail for a few months of my life, several probably at this point. But if you've been behind bars, you know it's like time is going slowly. You're actually transported to the past in a lot of ways because you can only get your news from newspapers or television news. Like you're restricted to all the old media. And if you're lucky, you've got a friend on the outside that might print out some stories for you from that you might find interesting from some other news source besides the county newspaper or whatever, because otherwise that's all you get. And of course, they're not reporting on Bitcoin 99% of the time, and if they are, it's probably a story about how Bitcoin's dead or whatever. So that's what you're going to get from the mainstream media. So of course, Ross Ulbricht is. I suspect people are sending him stories in there, but he's pretty disconnected. All that considered.
Maybe we should do a mail to jail for Ross Ulbricht, rally the troops, and get everybody to send him a little something.
It's always a good idea. The address is over at freeross.org. I mean, it's pretty easy to send a mail. So please do. I'm sure he'd appreciate hearing from you, even if he doesn't know who you are, even if, you don't, you're not some superstar or whatever, and you're just a person who cares about him. It's just nice to get mail from anybody.
When he was in jail, it was really sad how many people told me, like, listen, I started trying to write him something, and I just couldn't think of anything. And it's just like, you can write, just imagine having nothing to do and receiving a letter just about what somebody did throughout their day and what they thought about whatever they felt like talking about. It's just like better than nothing.
Absolutely. So he says, first on Bitcoin, he says, I can't begin to describe to you the phenomenon that has been unleashed upon the world. Bitcoin is big. It's a market worth hundreds of billions of dollars, with tens of billions traded on a daily basis. It is hard to find a person today who isn't a little familiar with it. Everyone knows the name, hundreds of millions can describe the basics of what it is, and tens of millions around the world own some and cherish it. Nearly every government has talked about it, written papers on it, tried to regulate various aspects of its use, and pretended to nurture its innovation while also pretending not to smother it. The scale of what has unfolded is immense, and it's become a true David versus Goliath story, one through which we have only thus enjoyed the first few chapters. And Bitcoin has inspired an entire industry and ecosystem of similar technologies built on similar principles, that money and finance should be open, immutable, borderless, and free from central control. Despite many scams, false starts, and failed projects, this industry is thriving. It is out of control in the very best sense of the term. It cannot be stopped, cannot be arrested, cannot be caged. The past year has been fairly dismal for the price and public enthusiasm, but this happens in cycles, and while crypto hums along, the world's fiat financial system is quaking, ravaged by inflation, increasingly brittle and manipulated. The lifeboats now sit waiting, and those of us already inside can only be grateful for every innovator, builder, and risk taker that has brought this salvation to us. We are grateful for you, Ross, and we do not forget your role. Second, on drugs. I lament the state of the world in many ways, governments encroaching further into the lives and liberties of people, while these same people often cheer it on and beg for more, oblivious to the path down which they march. And yet, outside of the glorious crypto revolution, there has been one other clear, irrefutable bright spot in American society at least. Perspective on drug use is changing. So a little bit more here from Eric Voorhees in his letter to Ross Ulbricht.
Beautiful.
We'll share it, and you can share your thoughts as well. At 603-283-6160, this is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live. You can join the show here and bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're sharing a letter to Ross Ulbricht from Eric Voorhees. He is one of the founders, the founder, I think, of Shapeshift, which is a great, good old crypto website. It's been around for many years and has changed form over those years. It has gone from being used by anyone without an account to exchange one crypto for another, to being threatened by the government, as I understand it. At least that's what seems to have happened, where they were threatened and they were told, you better make people have accounts or else we're going to hurt you. And so they made people have accounts at that point. Their business took a huge dive after that, and they still managed to stick around until they finally got to the point where they could implement a decentralized exchange technology called Thorchain behind the scenes of Shapeshift. And now they don't require accounts anymore.
Nice.
And then they decentralized the company. They took it from a centralized corporation and eliminated the corporation over a period of 6 months. They had to kind of whittle things down and shut centralized systems down and transfer to a decentralized autonomous organization. That whole story on its own is really fascinating.
Yeah, so what you're saying is Eric Voorhees is also a hero, just like Ross Ulbricht.
He's definitely a leader and a longtime Bitcoin investor, somebody who's been a huge influence, I think, on a lot of people.
And those boys are sharp. Some of the sharpest minds in the world today are working on cryptocurrency and the earliest ones to market are the sharpest ones.
Yeah, and Eric is also noteworthy because he's a Free State Project early mover. He migrated here to New Hampshire. He doesn't live here now, unfortunately, but he had to move elsewhere for his business. Hopefully we'll see him back someday. But yeah, he's definitely one of the movers and the shakers. So he's talking about the amazing success that has been Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and he's just trying to relay a little fraction of that to Ross Ulbricht, who of course is the founder of the Silk Road, sitting in prison for 2 life sentences plus 40 years. And he just wanted to share with him also another success, and that is that the American perspectives on drug use is finally changing. He says, you're certainly aware that marijuana is legal in many states already, as in fully recreationally legal. It sits on store shelves, and civilized individuals walk in, compare prices, brands, and potencies, talk with friendly counter staff, purchase nicely packaged product, and walk out. It is peaceful, it is cooperative, and these are rarely drug addicts ruining their lives, but rather normal individuals who enjoy the experience of altered states of consciousness in various forms. Within a decade, I believe marijuana will be legal federally in the United States. And maybe they took the first step this week, by the way, with the Biden administration, Biden announcing he was pardoning all federal cannabis possession cases. So everybody who's been convicted of possession, simple possession, not a huge deal, but it's still something. It's something the feds have never done in the history of the war on drugs. And in addition, he did request that his administration investigate changing the scheduling of cannabis. Now, they're just investigating. They haven't actually changed it. So in theory, you can still get arrested for possession of cannabis if you're on a federal park or something like that. But maybe these things are starting to change at the federal level. He says, so he thinks it'll be legal federally in the U.S. Perhaps all those innocent people locked in cages for their non-crimes will be released. It is feasible. But beyond marijuana, there are exciting developments in the medical research of various psychedelics as well as MDMA. Reputable scientific institutions are running studies revealing shockingly positive results. MDMA is being recognized not only as a successful treatment for afflictions like PTSD, but actually as perhaps the single best treatment ever revealed. In many cases, people have been outright cured through these treatments. People's lives are being saved by these drugs, and psychedelics are showing similar strong effects in treating various psychological afflictions. He says, beyond the medical research, a book and documentary series by Michael Pollan has gone mainstream called How to Change Your Mind. This book presents the history of the science of psychoactive drugs in the U.S., how it was smothered out despite promising results, and how this research is finally coming back to the United States and Europe over the last decade. All such drugs remain Schedule 1 in the U.S., meaning that they have, quote-unquote, no medical value. This dubious classification is misguided to the point of absurdity, and it must break at some point. The data is too strong, the scientific and cultural momentum becoming too great.
And too many people know about it. now. I mean, it's just like it's always been there. The scientific evidence has always been there, but it's just most people didn't know about it.
Well, more so recently, there have been a lot more studies that have been officially allowed to happen in the U.S. due to the FDA actually approving certain levels of these studies, and it's been slowly kind of ramping up over the last 20 years. So not only are there more studies available in the last 2 decades, but as you say, more people know about it now, Bonnie. You cannot keep this information in the same way that you used to be able to before the internet. Now, anyone with an internet connection can easily inform themselves about these things, whereas, in the 1990s and before that, you couldn't really know what was going on unless you went to a Terence McKenna speech or did an extreme level of research. Now anyone with a search engine can get the latest news on psychedelic testing. So they can't keep it a secret anymore. He says, I convey all this to you, not to drudge up memories of what got you in trouble, but to make sure you're aware of the truly good things happening outside, themes toward which you've been a pioneer and a champion. So while you sit in there with this stoic resolve and inspiring perspective that we all see and appreciate through your posts on Twitter, know that your hand has furthered 2 societal revolutions occurring at the same time. Please keep the communications going. Hundreds of thousands of people know who you are, why you're important, and hope, work, and pray for your release someday. As you've discovered in the darkest of places, life is beautiful and worth living wherever you are. Sincerely, Eric Voorhees.
What a great letter.
Yeah, just beautiful. We'll link to that and also the post by Ross himself on our social media, which you can follow us over at social.freetalklive.com. That is our social media platform. Unfortunately, Ross isn't on our platform. He is still on Twitter, but he does post there fairly regularly. I think it's Real Ross U, I believe it's
How
his
does
handle.
he post?
He sends his post to his family, and
somebody does it for him,
his mom or his sister.
So he's not allowed to have a cell phone in there or anything like that?
No, they don't let you do that stuff. I mean,
I thought that
some prisoners have them, but they're not supposed to.
No, I thought that you can get a tablet.
Yeah, you can get tablets in some prisons. I don't know if the feds are doing tablets.
Well, isn't Chris Cantwell in a federal prison, or is it state?
He is. He's in a federal
Yeah,
prison.
he has tablets sometimes, tablet access sometimes.
Okay,
according to his friend.
I did not know that. That's good news for him, I guess. They usually charge you through the nose for accessing things like this, but I think prisons and jails are realizing that they can pacify their prisoners more if they just allow them some niceties like that. They're more likely to be happy if they can send a text message to somebody at home.
If you've experienced having access to the internet, suddenly being not allowed to have access to the internet is just like torture, honestly. It sounds silly, but I don't know, when the feds stole my phone, I just felt so like the world was really, really awful until I got a phone back.
Well, you have to also remember,
not
even
back,
though
a friend gave me a phone.
They'll give you a tablet, but it's not internet access. You don't have unfettered web access on these systems. They'll give you a paid email app where you have to pay by the word or by the email or something like that to send.
And it's a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, it's expensive, and they limit the number of people that you can email, and so there's going to be some restrictions.
At least you can play games instead of just sitting there out of your mind. Because seriously,
well, you don't just
most people
sit there
don't do that
necessarily.
anymore.
You can get books in most jails and prisons, so hopefully you can do that at the very bare minimum. But more on the way here, and you can join the show on Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. A US jury's recommended life in prison rather than the death penalty for the young man responsible for the country's deadliest high school shooting. Nicholas Cruz was 19 when he returned to the school in Parkland, Florida, that expelled him and opened fire. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
After less than a day of deliberation, a unanimous verdict from the jury: life behind bars without parole. The jury said although the murders were cold and calculated, Nicholas Cruz is a broken and mentally ill man and should not get the death penalty. Cruz was calm and showed no emotion as the verdict for each one of the 17 counts of first-degree murder was read to a courtroom packed with family members of the victims, many of whom shook their heads and whispered to each other as they tried to make sense of the jury's decision. But the judge did not issue her sentence. The state prosecutor, who's arguing for the death penalty, says more victims have yet to give their points of view. The court will reconvene on November 1st.
The committee investigating the January 6th attack on the US Capitol has voted to subpoena former President Donald Trump. The committee says it has enough evidence to push for criminal charges against multiple individuals relating to the attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
Democrat lawmaker Benny Thompson said Donald Trump must be accountable, adding the former president is required to answer for his actions. In what's expected to be the final January the 6th hearing, the committee laid out how Donald Trump inspired the violence that unfolded on Capitol Hill, and how he repeatedly tried to join the crowds at the Capitol, even after they began attacking police officers. The committee's subpoena is a formal summons for Trump to appear in person to testify under oath. However, he's now likely to fight that, even as the committee says it has sufficient information to consider criminal referrals for multiple individuals. And if that means Trump, the Department of Justice would need to make the decision to go ahead with a criminal prosecution.
NATO defence ministers have concluded a two-day meeting by reiterating their commitment to supporting Ukraine. Allies announced deliveries of air defence systems and specialist equipment to help Ukraine's forces get through the winter, ahead of a move welcomed by NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg.
NATO allies are supplying advanced systems, including artillery, air defense, and armored vehicles.
And 24,000 Venezuelan migrants will gain entry to the US under a new deal the Biden administration struck with Mexico. The plan's intended to relieve some of the pressures at the border. Almost 4 times as many Venezuelans have attempted to cross into the US via Mexico this year, many having made the dangerous trek at the hands of ruthless smuggling organisations. From bureaus worldwide, this is
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tulsi Gabbard leaving the Democratic Party. We can talk about that on the way. Of course, your calls and thoughts are welcome. On the way in less than 2 weeks, closer to 1 week at this point, the Free Cities Foundation's annual conference, Liberty in Our Lifetime, is happening in Prague, October 21st through the 23rd. Our very own Mark Edge is going to be speaking at the conference. You can go there and get 20% off your tickets, but you got to do that in advance. So go to lifetimeliberty.com, code FTL20, and save 20% on your tickets to Liberty in Our Lifetime. It's happening Prague, October 21st through the 23rd. If you're not planning this thing yet, you're getting to the point of it's getting to be too late, but maybe you can make this work if you get cracking on it now, but your time's running out. Lifetimeliberty.com, code FTL20. You can go see Mark and some other great speakers there in Prague. As we go to Dave Ridley. He's on the line in New Hampshire. Go ahead, Ridley.
Hey, guys. Well, you know the saying, imitation is a sincerest form of flattery. And apparently there is now an attempt at forming a Free State project in Canada.
Yeah, I've heard about this. Is this the one in the little, not island, but that place like all the way to the east next to
Newfoundland?
Maine?
Nova Scotia?
Oh, Nova Scotia?
It's New Brunswick.
That's it, Brunswick.
New Brunswick.
It has a population of about 800,000.
Okay.
So it is half the size of New Hampshire, but the number of Canadians is so much smaller than the number of New Hampshireites. The number of Canadians is so much smaller than the number of Americans to pick from, that they'll have fewer people to pick from than we did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very closely modeled on the Free State Project, and I guess they have Free Stater advisors. It looks like they didn't have an election to decide which states they would use. They only had 10 provinces to pick from, and it may have been kind of obvious. I'm not sure. I think there was some indication that maybe Alberta should have been picked, or some people might think Alberta should have been picked, and they try to address that. But
isn't that a big one?
Yeah, Alberta's huge. I mean, at least with New Brunswick, I'm looking at the map here, it looks like it might be about the same size, maybe slightly smaller than Maine. So it is still a much larger landmass than New Hampshire is, but way smaller than most of the Canadian provinces.
I like hearing this because it's hard to, we have hundreds of Canadians that want to move to New Hampshire, the Free State Project, but it's very, very difficult for them to get out of their own country.
Well, one thing I noticed, too, is I've been in the Free State movement since 2002, and I've been in New Hampshire since 2004, and I've only met, to my knowledge, one Canadian, a Quebecois gal, and I've never met anyone else here in the movement from Canada. So I guess it's not like a spigot's going to be turned off, because we don't have one going right now.
Well, for one thing I was going to say when you first brought this up is just like, aren't people going to, like, when are people going to realize that this is a thing that shouldn't be duplicated because everybody should go to the same place? But one thing about Canada is it's harder to immigrate, so maybe these are just a group of people that literally can't immigrate to the United States, so therefore they're doing their own thing up there. Kind of makes sense.
Which I think is fantastic. My only question is, how are they going to get away from because they don't really function like states in the federal government of the United States do. How are they going to have to pull New Brunswick completely out of the federal government of Canada in order to successfully pull this off, right?
Well, we would have to pull out of the federal government of the United States.
Yeah. Is that the same, though?
Yeah, I don't know what the process would be. I mean, our plan here was to just put it up to a vote of the people and say bye-bye, declare our independence. Yeah. If they have the numbers, and they have the stick-to-itiveness, the gumption to do this, I mean, they're probably not going to roll troops in there, are they? I mean, what are the odds that
they did it in Ontario to the truckers?
That's right.
They rolled troops in there.
They didn't do it to Quebec when Quebec tried to become independent. They handled it the central government handled it pretty responsibly. And even though, like, on paper, Canada has less freedom than the United States, but in practice, they've been becoming more decentralized. The provinces have been gaining more power over the years, and the central government has been. I don't know so much about the last 10 years, but as of 10 years ago, that was pretty much true, as I understand it.
What is the project called? Does it have a name?
The New Brunswick Free Province Project, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I've seen them posting on Twitter. I don't know how things are going with their project. Are they giving any kind of updates on membership numbers? Can we get any kind of idea of how this is going? Did it just get started this year? What's the timetable looking like?
I believe the website said they started in 2021, and I did not see any kind of, like, breaking news. This happened, that happened, we're doing this, that. It was just more like there's just kind of, it feels like they're just now forming, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good for them.
Yeah, I hope it works out for all those who cannot escape to New Hampshire, although certainly many have pointed out that there's plenty of eligible bachelors here in New Hampshire for any Canadian libertarian women and gay guys or whatever that want to make the move down here and get hitched. I mean, that is a pretty easy way from what I understand. I mean, nothing's easy.
Well,
I don't think it's easy. Yeah. I don't think it's that simple.
They get into your business.
They really get into your business. The U.S. government wants to know everything about your beautiful love, and they want to make sure that you're for real. And even when it is, a lot of people get denied.
It's not easy as in just anything, but compared to the other ways that you can get citizenship, it's easier.
It's less arduous.
Yeah. The other one's like having a business, like you have to have a big old business and like $1 million and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that if you really are in love, then that's a way in. It is definitely a way in. So you can certainly come to visit and meet people and see how it goes.
My old boss was Australian and her husband was from Arkansas. And this is a woman who was the CEO of a major drug company in Australia when she left. And she still has to go to green card meetings as of last year. Anyway. So she's still, it's ridiculous. She's been in the country for She's actually moved away from the country to England and back since then, and she's still got it. In order to keep her U.S. citizenship, she's still got to go to these green card meetings with him. It's ridiculous.
It's one of the reasons why we need to secede as soon as possible.
100%. Let's get out of here.
Interesting, Ridley. Anything else you want to share?
That's all.
Thanks for the call tonight. That's Dave Ridley from RidleyReport.com. As we continue here, Sarah is on the line in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, I'm just really proud of myself. I already mailed in my ballot today.
Well, pat yourself on the back.
I'm just always nervous though. I'm like a nitpick. I'm always afraid that I did something wrong, but I did sign it. I did put my name and I filled out the address.
Was it all Democrats that you voted for?
Well, yeah, the ballot is very peculiar because they want you to retain. Do you want to retain this judge? And every single one of the 8 judges were all Democrats.
Did you vote for Monica Monica Zamora? Sorry, M. Monica Zamora.
Yeah, the one that David hates so much. Yeah, that I always vote for her.
Same. Terrible.
Yeah.
So Sarah, why do you think anyone cares that you voted by mail?
Well, why should anybody care? I'm just saying that I'm proud of New Mexico that it's available to us, and this year you could just it has blue. It's distinctive.
Couldn't you do it before this year? Wasn't it always a possibility? It's called an absentee ballot. I mean, those things have been around forever.
Right, but you know what? I got mine as soon as they mailed it out. They mailed it out. I don't know. I got mine the 11th, and then the next day I'm just mailing it in right afterwards. So the last day to mail it in is November 8th. So I'm done. I've got it done. I'm just really proud of myself. And
you have to understand, Sarah doesn't work. So
I understand.
This is, an accomplishment.
How does one live if they don't work?
Welfare.
Theft.
You just stealing.
Well, I have disability.
No, other people steal for
welfare.
her.
Disability is welfare.
Okay.
Yeah, it's welfare. If you can work, Sarah, and you can, I'm sure of it, because you call our show every single night like clockwork. If you can work and you're getting a payout for not working, that is by definition welfare. Out of time for tonight with Sarah. We got more time for you if you join us. The number is 603-283-6160 in the remaining moments of Free Talk Live. If you want to join us now, you should get on the line. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. And moments remain here. Enough time for you if you want to join us now. The number is 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian,
Matt,
and Bonnie.
And don't forget, you can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. There's a documentary that is in production about the Crypto 6, of which I am one. We had the FBI raid our studio in March of 2021. The drama is not over yet. There's still a trial to come for me that's scheduled for as soon as December. The independent film crew that is looking to make this documentary, they did come out last year and they did some shooting. They put together a 9-minute long trailer that you can watch over at balladofthecrypto6.com. That's the number 6. balladofthecrypto6.com, where you can also become an Indiegogo backer and you can earn perks that go from t-shirts to possibly even hosting Free Talk Live and dining with some of your favorite co-hosts. You can go to balladofthecrypto6 with the numeral 6.com to watch the trailer and get behind.
You mean the number 6? Because isn't numeral like X
that means
or
number.
V1? Oh, I don't know.
No, that would be Roman numerals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we continue here. We did just get a phone call from somebody off the air. Normally, I don't really talk about people that call the show and don't want to go on the air, but this particular gentleman was calling
Happens a lot.
He was calling from inside a federal prison, and so that was, I guess, the reason why he didn't want to be heard. But he says he listens every single night at this. Thankfully, we're on broadcast radio in the area of this federal prison, so he listens constantly. And he wanted to let us know that, to what Bonnie was saying before, there are tablets that are coming to federal prisons. He says they're expected in, I think, November of this year. So it sounds like they don't have them yet, but they're coming. And I asked him about, or he mentioned cell phones as well. He says a lot of guys in there have cell phones. And I said, well, isn't it true that that's not legal? They're not supposed to. And he said, yeah, they're not supposed to.
Oh.
But apparently they come in on drones.
Which is awesome.
And I asked him, well, how do they charge them? He says, well, they have chargers. I said, well, does that mean you have outlets in your prison cells? And he says, yes. So, like, normally, I guess maybe it's if you're not on... This would be for a prisoner to actually answer, but I'm guessing if you're not on, like, the whole
like you're locked down kind of thing, then you probably have quote-unquote privileges, and that includes access to some form of electricity. In fact, I've even heard some prisons where you can like order a television on commissary for your prison cell. So I don't know if that's true in federal prison or not, but I've heard that story. So apparently if you can get a phone smuggled into you, then there's a way to charge it if you're in federal lockup.
Well, okay then. Thanks for the clarification on that.
According to one of our listeners in federal prison in Texas. Tulsi Gabbard, she made the news this week. She says she's leaving the Democratic Party, this according to WashingtonExaminer.com, denouncing lawmakers on the left for promoting policies that she says, quote, racialize every issue and stoke anti-white racism. In a video announcement released Tuesday, Gabbard called on other members of the party to abandon the Democratic Party, accusing the left of only protecting the, quote, powerful elite. Unquote. She says it's not clear what party Gabbard plans to join next or if she intends to remain independent. Quote, I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that is now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness.
Now? Wait, it has been under the control of that cabal forever.
And it's just like she purposely used those words to like signal to the right to vote for her.
I agree.
It's just like trashy. It's like internet ghetto slang.
Well, and this is, again, like 2 days after videos came out of her running through like a gun maze gun training where she's firing weapons and being badass or whatever. She's totally pandering to the right.
And it's like people who didn't know that she's a gun rights infringer might think, oh, she's just always been cool on guns. But
no.
Not at all.
Nope, hasn't at all. She believes in quote-unquote common sense gun control and called for it right after Uvalde this year. And
it was that recent?
Yeah, and people are immediately forgetting that.
Wow.
Well, isn't she claiming she's changing her opinion?
She didn't even come right out and give any actual details at all or any like stance. She just put out a video of her, in tight pants doing gun things and then said, oh, there's a cabal and I'm an independent-minded Democrat.
I bet those Republicans are getting all hot and bothered about her.
I'm sure they're going right into Sarah Palin territory again.
That's so funny. That's exactly what I said. That's exactly what Ian said. Now that's what you said too. And LPNH was even Virgin posting about her the other day.
No,
they posted
Didn't
a picture
they
of
delete
her.
It, though?
They immediately deleted it after I said that they were Virgin posting. They posted a picture of her.
Put those guys in their place.
Looking really big, and they said if she wants to walk back gun control, we're happy to support her and watch.
Look, if she's changing her position, that's good, but you're saying, Bonnie, you have not seen any sort of change of position.
Nothing substantial.
Right, so she probably still supports various different government regulations, just like conservatives do, by the way. Very few conservatives are calling for the abolishment of federal gun laws.
Yep.
They're just saying, oh, well, we don't need more gun laws. Right. But they're fine with the existing 20,000 or whatever.
No, they're not interested in moving the Overton window.
They don't want to abolish the ATF. They don't want to restrict, the FBI. It's all a bunch of hot air.
They're clowns.
She is a politician, so you can consider this a bunch of hot air as well.
I just want to know what makes these politician types tick. Like, why move? Like, why is she moving? Like, I don't know what the words I'm looking for, but she's going back on anything she was so certain of just 10 minutes ago. And
she feels like she can get something out of this, right? She thinks she's going to get... In recent years, she's had support from the right on certain issues.
She spoke at Revolution, which is a conference that Young Americans for Liberty hosts every year in Florida with Ron Paul as a speaker, and she spoke there this year. I was like, ew.
Even though she's not a libertarian.
No.
Right. But she panders to these alternative parties like the Libertarians. She tries to get there were some Libertarians. Reed couldn't make it tonight, Reed Coverdale. He campaigned for her in 2016, I believe it was. Now, he's no longer a fan of hers because he's sort of evolved personally since that time, but she's cast her spell on a lot of
libertarian men.
And she's pretty.
But for a politician, she's unusually good looking.
Yeah,
for a politician.
If that's what she got, what else? I mean, I need more than that. Yeah. At every turn, I need more than that.
I think the prettiest politician in the United States right now is, I can't remember her name all of a sudden, but she is from where my friend is from in the most southern part of Texas. and lots of libertarians are like fanboying over her too.
Is she like a national politician or something?
No, she's like a state rep from Brownsville, Texas.
Okay.
I can't remember her
I don't
name.
know.
She's the one that Nancy Pelosi like pushed away her child to get in a better position for
I
the
heard
picture.
about this, yeah.
I think her first name is Maria, but yeah, I can't remember her last name now.
Well, I hope she gets out of politics so she can save her beauty, because it will likely be sucked away by, her soul will leave her body because she's doing politics for too long.
Yeah, like that lady that's running in New Hampshire. What's her name, Ian?
Maggie Hassan?
No, Levitt. Carolyn Levitt.
Yeah.
She's
younger
supposed to
than
be
you.
supposedly younger than me, and she looks
35.
48.
40, yeah.
48.
All right, so I want to just finish her statement because she
All
deserves
right,
some
let's hear it.
credit for leaving the Democratic Party and calling out the warmongers, even though she's a decade too late or whatever.
She was in the military.
She says they divide us by radicalizing every issue and stoke anti-white racism, actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms, are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, demonize the police, and protect criminals at the... That's not true, by the way. Joe Biden loves himself the cops. He was saying during the campaign that the police need to have a bigger budget, not have budget cuts.
How can you talk about our God-given rights in the same sentence as you support the police?
Because you're a conservative.
Or a liar.
Conservatives
It's also what
do that crap
liars
all
do.
the time. Conservatives love to talk about God and rights and then
Cops.
worship. Yeah, worship at the altar of the police. And she says they protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, believe in open borders, weaponize the national security state to go after political opponents, and above all, dragging us ever closer to nuclear war.
And if you think that means she's becoming libertarian at all, just
no way.
Just throw in your hat. You're not a libertarian. Just go be a conservative like you really are. Stop pretending that you're something maybe that looks more cool, but you kind of feel like you fit in. No, you're a conservative if you believe in closed borders, pro-cops. I can't remember what else.
Some of our best and brightest have had one-on-ones with Tulsi Gabbard and gotten absolutely nowhere with her speaking in very libertarian form, and nothing she says or does from here on out can be believed.
She has no principles. She's
Zero.
like
No
most
principles.
politicians, she's in it for Tulsi.
You're right.
She wants to promote her brand, and she thinks she's going to get a better shot at winning some sort of primary or position if she cozies up to the right. Now, she hasn't yet announced that she's joining the Republicans. She's just pounding the drum of leaving the Democrats, getting some media coverage.
Which I guess is fine, whatever.
We'll see. We'll see what she does.
It'll be news for next month.
Yeah. Out of time for tonight. You can join us online between now and tomorrow, anytime at freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews,